across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the amazing Ian Collins here on the home of common sense. That is Talk. We've just had the amazing Mark Dolan before me, and I'll be guiding you through the next 3 hours and what a show we have lined up for you today. But before I take you through what you need to do in order to get in touch, let me tell you what it is we're going to be talking about. So, coming up, new Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has vowed to do whatever it takes to stop small boat crossings, warning the UK could suspend visas from countries that refuse to play ball and take back migrants. Meanwhile, she has ruled herself out of running for Labour's deputy leadership as the party begins the search for Angela Rayner's replacement, with some insisting the role should go to a woman. And a senior judge has sparked outrage after wishing the mastermind of the 7/7 bombings all the best as he prepares to walk free, with critics calling the remarks an insult to victims and demanding the judge be removed. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what you need to do to tell us your views. You call in via 0344 499 1000. That's how you can also WhatsApp us and voice note us too. You can also text the word TALK to start your message to 87222, and you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. My big question for you today is simple. Will Labour's reshuffle finally stop the boats? Yes or no, and why? 0344 499 1000 is how you call us, it's how you WhatsApp us, and it's how you voice note us. 87222 is how you text with the word TALK to start your message, and you can message and follow us on X at TalkTV. Now, let's get to that question, and let me give you my view. So Keir Starmer is simply shuffling the decks on the Titanic. At the end of the day, he hasn't actually really brought in lots of new talent into cabinet. What he's done is simply move people from one job to another. The reality is that he remains the biggest problem for this Labour government, alongside his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, both deeply unpopular with the public, where only I saw one YouGov poll suggesting that 11% approve of Sir Keir Starmer's reign as Prime Minister under this Labour Party, which goes to show things are looking pretty rocky indeed. The truth and the matter is that Shabana Mahmood can talk the talk, but will she be able to walk the walk when it comes to having to do the necessary things in order to stop illegal migration via small boats, to port people who have come to this country illegally, and therefore rebuild trust in the great British public? She might say the right things. She might want to do the right things. I don't know Shabana very well, but I certainly see lots in the Westminster bubble seeming to talk her up. However, Sir Keir Starmer's already ruled out touching the ECHR. Some nuanced guidance for judges or even carve-out is simply not going to do the trick. I know that because I myself thought that was a compromise position for the Conservative Party in order to try and get those deportation flights off to Rwanda and therefore enable us to demonstrate to the British public that we took stopping the boat seriously. And guess what? We weren't listened to. Many of my Conservative colleagues voted against it, and even then I still thought that carve-out and guidance would still mean judicial review after judicial review and simply wouldn't lead to actually tackling the problem at source. So, I think Sir Keir Starmer can shuffle all he wants. The only thing he needs to do to save this Labour Party is to shuffle out of Downing Street, take Rachel Reeves with him, and then allow someone else to lead Labour, and that might give them a chance to stop Nigel Farage. But do you agree? 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222, and you can message and follow us on X at TalkTV. Well, my first guest, he joins me down the line because these silly tube strikes means it's hard to get into work today. His name is Mr. Kevin Schofield, a friend of ours here on the show. He's the political editor of the Huffington Post UK. Hello, Kevin, how are you?
Well, Jonathan, I would like to point out I'm actually in Westminster, in case anyone thinks that this tiny little room is my house. I'm in a little hole that they put us in to broadcast from. Oh, bless. The Parliament, so that's where I am.
Well, well done for making it into Westminster. That's quite the achievement. I was in an Uber for an hour and a half from Euston Station to get here today and was worried I wasn't going to make it on air on time. But look, Kevin, Look, we've got the big news here. The Daily Mail's going on the lead of 30,000 reasons why Labour won't stop the boats, obviously pointing to the fact that now, under this Labour government, in 2025, we've seen over 30,000 illegal migrants arrive via small boat. That is 37% higher than any other year, or the previous year, sorry, on record. I think, and it's the fastest pace in which numbers are growing. Shabana, on her first day, had to deal with the fact that 1,097 small boat immigrants tipped the total for 2025 to more than 30,000 in record time. Now, Miss Mahmood has done, I think, a Paul Clip interview today, which we shared by many different broadcasters, where she has said that she's the do-what-it-takes Home Secretary. She is saying that she is not afraid to revoke visas from countries that won't work when it comes to deporting people, whether that be foreign national defenders or indeed illegal migrants. And she is certainly, as we've been told from briefings inside of Cabinet, one of the more vociferous people when it comes to being willing to talk or do the necessary thing when it comes to the European Convention of Human Rights. Do you think Shabana Mahmood can save Sir Keir Starmer on the issue of immigration, Kevin?
I'm not convinced, really, that she'll be able to. I've no doubt about her abilities. I think she was a good appointment, actually. I think Yvette Cooper had probably run out of road as far as the Home Office was concerned. I think that's obvious what Keir Starmer believed. He trusts Shabana Mahmood implicitly. However, I just think it's such a massive, almost intractable problem. I don't think that she'll be able to solve it herself. The problem, obviously, that she's got and that Keir Starmer has got is that there's an acknowledgement now within Downing Street that unless they can stop the boats, or at very least reduce them to a trickle, then people just aren't going to be satisfied. So that's why she was the big name move, I think, in the reshuffle, and all the pressure on her now is to try and stop these boats, but also close the asylum hotels as well, as Labour promised that they would do. So yeah, huge pressure on her, massive responsibility, and Keir Starmer better hope it works, because if it doesn't, then he's in an awful lot of trouble.
Well, I must say, Kevin, I don't know Shabana. I've seen many comments from political editors such as yourself in Westminster, who obviously would have probably had interactions and dealings her whilst in opposition, as well as obviously since being in government. I see there's a lot of talk about her being part of this blue Labour, the more socially conservative elements of the Labour Party. Can you just share a bit about what your insight is, Shabana? Why should maybe talk listeners think to expect maybe a very different tone from this Labour Home Secretary?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Jonathan, actually. Blue Labour, very much socially conservative, very much on the right of the Labour Party, whereas Yvette Cooper, I say you would probably describe her as soft left. She could maybe talk tough, but actually when it came to implementing the really tough measures that are going to be needed in order to crack this problem, she would probably take a breath and not bother doing it. Whereas Shabana Mahmood doesn't have any such concerns. I think she will be willing to go that extra mile within the confines of the Labour Party as well. Remember, they are a left of centre party. She's not going to go veering off in a sort of reform direction. She is, at the end of the day, a Labour politician, but she's definitely of the right of the Labour Party. So it'll be interesting to see what ideas she comes up with that are tougher than Yvette Cooper, because, as I said earlier, undoubtedly, if she fails, then this whole Keir Starmer project fails, I think.
And I'm intrigued that you say that, Kevin, because the view surely now is that Shabana, as you say, sort of on paper, in theory, she should be Labour's best option for willing to take the fight to reform and deliver on small boats to an extent where the public can start to see and feel change. But do you think, like I certainly do, that if she fails, and I think she will fail only because she'll be hampered by her boss, Sir Keir Starmer himself. I think all blame lies on his door. He can shuffle the deck chairs all he wants. He's the problem. But if she fails, then do you think the election is already handed over to Nigel Farage, because this issue will just become the issue of the next general election?
I mean, I wouldn't want to say this far out from the next election that it's nailed on, that Labour will fail and that Nigel Farage will take over. But I think we saw in the Reform conference over the weekend, they are beatable. There are still some really odd things going on within the Reform Party. Nigel Farage as well, U-turning on various things. So I don't think he's got it in the bag. But there's no doubt at all that they are in the box seat right now. And if Labour don't grow the economy, that was the other big message, I think, from the reshuffle, was Pat McFadden become the new Work and Pension Secretary with responsibility for skills as well. His job is to grow the economy alongside Rachel Reeves, but also stopping the boats and closing the asylum hotels. If they don't do those three things, then I think they've had it. Now, that's not to say that it's inevitable then that Nigel Farage wins, who knows what's going to happen with the Conservative Party? They may change leader, they may get someone in who re-energises the party and gets them back in the game. At the moment, that looks unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out. But it's by no means nailed on for Nigel Farage, but undoubtedly it's in Labour's gift. Labour are the government, they can make things happen, but they've got to make things happen, and they've got to basically show the public that they recognise their priorities and they're going to act on them, because if they don't, then, as I say, they are in a lot of trouble.
Now, Kevin, you talked there about Reform Party conference. I was there on the Friday on the commercial pass. I got asked that question lots why I was there, as you can imagine, so I'll clarify that now. I was there in my other site with my other business, a Aegean Consultants, shamelessly plugging that there. I'll get told off by the producers afterwards. But we obviously were there with a number of clients, and I thought the Friday overall was was very well run, actually, as far as I was concerned. It looked very professional. I was then away, but I saw what was going on the Saturday. And I don't think Reform UK helped themselves. Look, Lucy Connolly, I expect that there's a debate. I personally don't see that as being an issue by having her on stage. I think this doctor, however, from America, part of the MAGA movement, I believe, making comments that I think are both distasteful and disgusting when it came to the COVID vaccine is somehow the cause for the cancer of His Majesty King Charles. These type of things are just not helpful for Reform UK, because it does open, as you say, the door to political opponents to paint them out as a sort of fringe extremist weird party, which is what Reform has always had to battle against initially, because Nigel Farage has always been accused of being someone on the fringe of politics, not in the mainstream by certain commentary. I don't obviously agree with that. But I think that it would have been sensible, wouldn't it, for Reform to have come out today and said, look, we did put this guy on stage. The comments he made were disgusting and disgraceful. We obviously won't be platforming again, and we certainly don't agree with his views. Instead, they seem to have doubled down on, well, it's a free speech situation we were having here, and we're entitled to have debate and listen to views that we don't like. I don't think any of us disagree with that. I certainly don't disagree with that. But at the end of the day, this is party conference. You do choose, and therefore you can open up the attack to say, well, you did invite these people to your conference, and therefore suggest, that you may be empathetic with those views.
Yeah, and it's not as if this doctor was speaking at a fringe event. I mean, we've all been to party conferences. I certainly have been to numerous party conferences where you go to a fringe event and people will say controversial things, but they're not endorsed by the party. They might well be completely unconnected to the party, or they might be, an activist speaking off the cuff. But this is someone who was, as you say, booked by the party to come along and speak on the main stage. Now, that is a tacit endorsement, really, as far as I'm concerned, of what he had to say. And it's not as if these views have come out the blue. I mean, a simple Google search of this doctor would tell you this is what he thinks. So they shouldn't have been surprised. But you're right, it wasn't fatal. They could have said, well, we didn't expect him to say that. We obviously do not endorse what he said about the king. But they've chosen to defend it, really, by saying it as a freedom of speech issue. Now, I was on another radio programme yesterday, and the leader of Kent County Council, who's a Reform politician, was on, and she was asked about it, and she went off down a rabbit hole about how she's noticed that more people have cancer these days than before, and don't you think that's a little bit unusual? And then when she was asked, what do you think, Reform should maybe hold its own inquiry into links between the COVID vaccine and cancer, she said, well, that's something that we should consider. And you think, hang on a minute, if you're a serious party looking to form the next government, you would be tasked with administering vaccines, not just COVID, but MMR, polio, all the other vaccines that kids get when they're babies. If you are a vaccine skeptic, we've seen that can have potentially fatal consequences. So yeah, this is a row that was unnecessary, I think, from a Reform point of view, and a bit of an own goal.
Indeed, I think it shows that the party has made tremendous strides in a very short space of time. I thought the hall layout was very impressive, but indeed, those growing pains still very clear to see. Kevin will be joining us, ladies and gentlemen, after the break, where we'll be asking him about the runners and riders for the deputy leadership of the Labour Party, and what you think of that, as well as Mark Rowley, the Chief Constable for the Met Police, says that he needs the government to legislate in order to stop the police from monitoring our tweets rather than policing the streets. Do we really need legislation to do that? Surely that is just common sense and the police can choose to do that themselves. Well, you let us know what you think. 0344 499 1000. How you WhatsApp us, how you call us, and how you voice note us. 87222 is how you text us, the word talk at starting message. and you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. We'll see you shortly.
And they were going to have to do a reshuffle anyway. I think the calculus changed, and it was a bit of a, well, since we have to do a reshuffle and we had this plan for one, I think really it is a bit of a case of go big or go home. They decided, you know, the risk of doing it was lower than the risk of not doing it.
And it also took away some of the headlines, I suppose, from the, you know, the specifics of Angela Rayner. Not that they disappeared, but it meant that the big headlines by the 6 o'clock news was the reshuffle rather than the resignation. You think there's an easier and a swifter solution?
Yeah, there is. The easier and swifter solution is the second that that boot steps onto the British sand, they need to be arrested, they need to be detained, and then they need to be deported. And if you have videos of that going all over social media, instead of videos of people being put onto a coach, sent off to a hotel, getting 3 square meals
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello everyone, this is Talk with me, Jonathan Gullis, sitting on the home of common sense, and we have had a show, and we have had texts, and we have had WhatsApps, and we indeed are getting tweets too. Now, I look forward to getting into those because some of you seem to be upset by what Kevin and I were talking about when it came to this doctor who spoke on stage at Reform UK Conference. Kevin, by the way, is Mr. Kevin Schofield, I should have said. Let's go off the Huffington Post, who still joins me down the line. Kevin, just so you know, I was told by my producer in the break we've upset people, which is good, because that's good for healthy debate, and I still stand by what I think, which is someone who is putting views that are very much out there, that I don't think have actually got any major backing up in any scientific evidence from what I was able to research in advance of today's show, and actually making just a very crass, crude comment about His Royal Highness, I think is completely and utterly repugnant. I think it was an error from Reform UK. It doesn't mean I just don't think you can't listen to people you disagree with. In fact, I live in a household where my wife disagrees with most of my political views. My entire family are representative of the entire Rainbow Coalition of political parties. So I certainly find disagreement in my agreement around my own kitchen table a nightmare at the best of times. But doesn't mean that when someone says something stupid or silly that we shouldn't be brave enough to call out, even if we are sympathetic at times to maybe what they say. And as I say, on this occasion, I am not. So keep texting in indeed. Now, Kevin, Runners and riders for the deputy leadership. We have Louise Haigh being pushed, it seems like, by Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham. She seems to be warning about the Labour must, and it says here, to be radical to succeed, urging an economic reset that rips up the Chancellor's fiscal rules. She even attacks the OBR, saying the broken fiscal legacy and unaccountable orthodoxy of the OBR is one of the reasons that Labour is struggling to be heard on the economy. We've obviously heard Emily Thornberry. She was on the media round yesterday on another show where she certainly seemed to be dipping her toe into what we've heard. Dr. Rosina Ali Khan, I think, is also interested in running. But Kevin, who do you expect to see emerge? And what are the rules? Because I think that's just being agreed today by Labour's National Executive Committee, hasn't it?
Yeah, they have. They've agreed them, and it's controversial, actually. It's a very truncated election contest. They've only got until Thursday, so 3 days, to get the minimum of 80 nominations. And as you'll know, Jonathan, that's a lot. It's a lot of MPs to try and get around in a very short space of time. So that's controversial. People think this is a bit of a leadership stitch-up. They don't want it to be a long, drawn-out affair. They want to lessen the chance of someone being elected who basically doesn't like Keir Starmer. So, but that's been voted through by Labour's National Executive Committee. So as I say, they've got until Thursday to get the 80 nominations. I'm just looking at it here. Then basically we'll find out on October the 25th. So voting is from the 8th to the 23rd of October, which basically means that the campaign will continue all the way through Labour Party conference. Quite interesting. Might make it more interesting than it would otherwise would have been, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, you mentioned Louise Haigh. Yeah, I think she's definitely interested, as is Emily Thornberry. Lucy Powell, I'm told, is being encouraged to stand now. As you know, she was sacked as Commons leader on Friday in Keir Starmer's reshuffle. She's said to be furious at the way she's been treated. So she may wish. I texted her this morning, no reply. Read into that what you will. Maybe she just doesn't want to speak to me. But so she may well throw her hat into the ring. Alison McGovern, who's a minister, she's another one who may well go for it. I don't anticipate anyone in the cabinet standing. Shabana Mahmood has already ruled herself out. She's got enough on her plate as Home Secretary. So yeah. There'll be a few, but as I say, because it's such a high bar to hit this 80 nominations by Thursday, in the final runoff, you might only get maybe 2 or 3 at most will stand. So it'll be very interesting to see. I expect it to be a woman. That's the one thing. We know that Labour have never had a female leader. So the one thing that they can do is have a female deputy leader. They've had them before. Obviously, Angela Rayner was a woman. So I'll be surprised if they elect a man this time.
Well, I'm keen to get your views there because Baroness Harman, Harriet Harman, that is for people who are tuning in, has said that she believes it must be a woman who takes over. She said on an interview with BBC's Radio 4 Today programme, I think if the party are getting on with it rapidly, that's right. In terms of extending the breadth of leadership, it probably needs to be someone outside of London, and it definitely needs to be a woman. But there are 185 Labour women MPs, many of them very talented indeed. I mean, does it definitely need to be a woman? Surely we're in a stage of the world now where it should be just the best person comes forward. Now, obviously, the deputy leadership contenders will be dealing with the most duplicitous electorate in the world. It'd be other MPs, let's be perfectly frank. But, I mean, we shouldn't be seeing... Surely for Labour, they want to avoid getting boxed in. They look like they're sort of doing the DEI agenda, which Reform will pounce on if they get the chance.
No, you're right, absolutely. But I think politically, it just would be a bad look if both the leader and the deputy leader are both men, especially since Labour do have a women problem when it comes to being leader. You know, the Conservatives all love to boast about Margaret Thatcher, maybe speak less about Theresa May and Liz Truss, but they always say, you know, we had the first female Prime Minister. Labour haven't even had a female leader. And that's always a stick that the Conservatives have to beat Labour with. So I think on those terms alone, it will have to be a woman. That being said, a very senior figure texted me earlier from the Labour Party who said, actually, you know what, it doesn't have to be a woman because we've already got a female Chancellor, a female Home Secretary, and now a female Foreign Secretary. So they're the 3 big offices of state other than Prime Minister. Why, you know, I think that sees off any accusations that Labour have a women problem, is what this person said. But I still think that you're probably only going to get women actually put their names forward for it. I'd be surprised if there are any men actually even throw their hat into the ring.
Maybe I'm a dinosaur, Kevin, but I just simply don't care. I just like to live in a world where maybe it's just the best person who puts themselves forward. If that's a woman, then so be it. Kevin here, another one. Sir Mark Rowley. This is fascinating because I find this mind-boggling, to be honest with you. So the Met Commission is expected to present proposal within weeks, and it's hoped that officers will be given more discretion to use common sense when dealing with reports about social media comments. He claims, and this is what he says here, regulations that were understandably intended to improve policing and laws that were intended to protect the vulnerable are now tying officers' hands, removing appropriate professional discretion, which some call common sense, and risk losing public confidence. The Met is working with wider policing to rapidly develop solid proposals for where reform is possible, either in policy and guidance or the law, which could be ready within weeks. Working out how to balance free speech with a safer online world is not like investigating crime in the streets. We won't achieve everything overnight, but there's a collective desire not to lose time in this. I mean, I find it a bit weird that we're being asked to once again legislate and have laws be passed in order to, what I just think surely comes down to a policing commanding decision, which is to prioritise, yes, if someone is a serious threat to someone's life with a tweet or posted online stalking and harassment, I think those are common sense. The police can see that's something serious. But when people are saying hurty things on X, some of them may indeed require legal action to be taken. But obviously, the shopkeeper having their shop raided, or someone having their home burgled, or their car stolen, or indeed someone just walking down the Oxford Street and having their phone robbed out of their hand, it shows surely policing commanders can just say, prioritise that rather than some stuff that's being said online. Surely that's the capability of the police already. Why do we need to legislate for this?
No, you're right. I mean, I think the police should be able to use their own discretion, shouldn't they? I'm sure the police are inundated with reports of crimes all day long, and there should be, I would have thought, a list of priorities. You know, ranging from murder, rape, assault, going down the list to burglary, shoplifting, etc. And I would have thought that an offensive tweet, as you say, as long as it's not threatening to kill someone, I'd have thought that would be quite low down the list of priorities, and that by the time you get to that position, the police are already dealing with much more serious crimes. So yeah, I think yourself, this place is busy. There's a lot of legislation going through all the time. I think that would be an unnecessary law. I'm very surprised even that the Commissioner thinks that that's what would be required. I think as well, Keir Starmer politically would much rather the police just get on and do that rather than hitting him with another request for legislation. They know that it looked bad. It's a bad look when people have been arrested for, as you would say, relatively minor activity on social media, rather than the things that people really care about, like shoplifting, having their phone nicked, things like that. That really annoy voters, and Labour want to address those concerns rather than people having their tweets policed.
Kevin Schofield, political editor, should I say, of Huffington Post UK. Thank you so much for joining us down the line. Well, you have been texting. One here, it's not stupid or silly if someone has a different opinion to you. I didn't say that. I think the comment made by that doctor on the stage of Reform UK's party conference on Saturday regarding King Charles was stupid and silly. I don't have an issue listening to different views and opinions. Mothers are Conservative, stepfathers Labour, biological fathers being Lib Dem / Conservative, stepmothers Green. In fact, actually, my stepmother's side of the family, she had an Irish nationalist great-grandfather or grandfather who was an elected member of Parliament back, I think, in the 30s, as far as it goes. So I come from a household where I have different views. The man who inspired me into British politics was a guy called Dr. Simon People. He was the Labour group leader of Tamworth Borough Council, a rabid socialist, but a great historian and teacher too. And he inspired me into frontline politics. So it's not about listening to different views. I'm happy to listen to them. But I think the comment that was made was stupid and silly, and Reform took a gamble by putting that person on stage. And by taking that gamble, they've then opened themselves up to allow their political opponents to attack them. I think that is legitimate criticism, and I'm sure Nigel Farage and Reform UK got broad enough shoulders to be able to handle such criticism. So there you go. Another one here coming in. Jonathan, we have lost all faith in this government, and it doesn't matter how much Starmer shuffles, we will never believe him. This lot will never stop the boats. Well, that comes back to the big question that I posed to you today, which is, will Labour's reshuffle finally stop the boats? What do you think? 0344 499 1000 is how you can call us, WhatsApp us and voice note us. 87222 is how you can text with the word talk to start your message, as well as message and follow us on X at talkTV. I'll see you soon.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis here on the home of common sense. That is Talk, and we have had a great show so far. Mr. Kevin Schofield, political editor of the Huffington Post UK, giving us his take on the big stories of the day. And you know what it is that you need to do. You need to call, text and WhatsApp. So you can answer my question. Will Sir Keir Starmer's reshuffle stop the boats? Yes or no, and why? To 0344 499 1000. That's how you call us, WhatsApp and voice note. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk to start your message, as well as message and follow us on X at talkTV. One texter coming in off the back of that story where Sir Mark Rowley's asking the government to pass new laws so the police stop policing tweets and start policing the street. Seems absurd to me. Here we have from Sue in Huddersfield. I'm sorry, but Sir Mark Rowley is just passing the buck as always. He's 100% responsible for bad ideological policing in the UK. This country needs real coppers in charge like Peter Blexley and Mike Neville, good friends of ours here on the home of common sense. I couldn't agree with you more there, Sue. Now we go to my next guest. She's also joining me down the line. Her name is Claire Pershall. She is the former Conservative government special advisor, an expert when it comes to the issue of migration. She will help us understand what's going on. Hello, Claire. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Doing well. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. I mean, not as probably in a better state than Shabana Mahmood. Bless her. First day in the job, and 1,097 illegal migrants crossed the English Channel, taking it to over 30,000 in 2025. I think 37% up on 2024, and the fastest year on record to hit that 30,000 target. In fact, the Daily Mail's not holding back, Claire. You'll see there 30,000 reasons why Labour won't stop the boats. I mean, do you have empathy, obviously, for this Labour government? Is it a situation they just simply inherited, or is it just bad decision-making?
No, I don't have empathy for them in the slightest, because they've spent so much of their time in opposition going against everything the Conservative government put forward in terms of immigration reform. They said that we couldn't deport people. They didn't want people to go to Rwanda. They certainly didn't want people to be held in military-style accommodation. And yet the U-turns that have happened on that over the weekend are quite impressive, I would say. But I think that we need to worry about having Shabana Mahmood. She is using some words like could. Well, that's doing a heavy lifting in a sentence. She isn't going to actually do anything. I think that she's come out fighting, which is all she can do. But she's going to find that the Home Office is not the easiest department, that her own backbenchers are going to be the ones who will fight against her. And none of this is going to be easy.
See, I don't know, Claire, maybe you do, but I don't know Shabana Mahmood. So I only take it from people I've read about in the Westminster bubble, for example, who would have had interactions with her off record, I'm sure, as well as on record too. I see Nick Timothy, Conservative MPs, come out and suggested that he's very concerned by the fact that in 2018 she was pushing for a definition of Islamophobia and has previously endorsed the Muslim Council of Britain and spoken at events organised by MEND as well. I know that she co-signed, I think, a letter with Sir Keir Starmer to stop the deportation of foreign national offenders as well, whilst he was running for the leadership of the Labour Party. So to my mind, there are certainly things that suggest that she is good at talking the talk, but ultimately is willing to walk the walk in a very different direction. She's saying about, like you say, I could suspend visas. Will that help the situation if we suspended visas to countries that won't take back migrants? Would that go far enough? Or would that just be, again, one solution, but ultimately maybe you need a whole suite of different things in order to actually really force other countries to take back illegal migrants and foreign national offenders?
Yeah, you would need a whole suite of responses, but that one isn't a bad one. And we have looked at that in the past. And sort of when I was in the Home Office, which was in 2018, 2019, we certainly used that as a lever against certain countries. And it does work because they want to be able to increase their business into the UK, for example, so they will want access to the visa system. So if you make it difficult, it does give you that extra oomph to be able to tell them to take back their criminals. But it isn't going to be in isolation. It's not going to work. And one of the other things that we need to be worried about with Shabana Mahmood is that she is a great supporter of digital ID. She seems to think that that is the way forward and that will help stop the boats or smash the gangs, or whichever phrase they would like to use. And I think that that is a more worrying a comment from a Home Secretary, because that affects all of us equally.
And when it comes to the digital ID, I've been honest. I've said I like the idea of it when it's been used in the Estonian model way. I saw that firsthand where it comes to being able to interact with public services. And if that means we can then dramatically slim down the size of the civil service, because we'll be able to just simply interact online with, you know, an online system for certain elements, you know, council tax or HMRC, etc., and not have to sit on the phone line for over an hour while some HMRC staff are getting some sort of weird lecture about why they should be unhappy before being British. But your concern is that it could obviously have far out or reaching aspects that maybe I hadn't considered. So what would be your concern about digital ID?
I think the one concern that I have is that governments in general are not very good at holding onto your data safely.
Yep.
What are they going to use it for? Now, we do have a system in this country to verify your ID through gov.uk, which sounds amazing. I've tried it a number of times. I had to renew my driving licence, so I went on and it couldn't verify my identity. Now, bearing in mind, I've worked in the House of Commons for 21 years. I've worked at the Home Office. I'm sort of relatively well documented.
You've done a lot of security forms there, Claire. A lot of security forms in that time.
Yeah, completely. And they couldn't find me. So I don't really trust the government to do that. And I'm not particularly comfortable about having to carry papers to access anything in my own country. When I do have the identification, if needed, I can produce my passport, I can produce my driving licence or my council tax statement. So I'm just really worried about the mission creep of the Labour government in that respect.
No, I think that's very fair indeed. And like I say, I always get flack on this channel, but I like to say, look, I saw what happened in Estonia. I quite like it. But I always say I see all the flaws, and I think that any idea of this happening would have to rely on the government having trust with the people, and this government certainly does not have that. I think it's very fair to say. I mean, we saw over the weekend it being trailed. Yvette Cooper apparently has been working hard to get some MOD sites set up to empty hotels quicker. Apparently Sir Keir Starmer's told Shabana Mahmood, you must empty these hotels well ahead of 2029 in a way to fight back against Reform UK and Nigel Farage. Is this a welcome again move, do you think, by Labour using disused MOD sites, or do you think that the scale of this will end up being quite disappointing? I always find it amazing that Labour are talking about it, but no actual detail to follow at present, the briefing that they clearly were putting into the newspapers.
And I think that's the problem, is that we don't have any detail about which sites in particular they're looking at. And we know from the past that if you try and push something onto a community, they're going to be particularly unhappy. And we saw that with RAF Scampton. That was one of those sites that was earmarked by the government at the time. And the community didn't like it. A village of 800 people didn't suddenly want 1,500 young men turning up on their doorstep. But it also begs the question is, how is this going to be paid for? If these are military sites, then they belong to the MOD. Is this the way of the Home Office getting money out of the MOD to spend on this so they don't touch their own budget? And I think the MOD need to push back really hard, because we need to look after our own service personnel. We need to make sure that their accommodation is up to scratch before we start looking at where we put asylum seekers and what accommodation we offer them. So I think there are a number of problems when it comes to this. And of course, who were the main opponents to any kind of military base usage? It was the Labour Party.
Well, this is the irony of all ironies. I remember sitting in the House of Commons in between 2019 and 2024 on the Conservative benches, of course, and, you know, seeing Labour be disgusted with the idea that people like me said we should be using tents, or we should be using sort of prefabbed blocks that we can put onto disused military sites, or indeed certain fields maybe where that could people would be detained and then deported. And hearing the outcry of somehow I was some sort of far-right lunatic, lo and behold, now Labour are certainly copying the playbook. I mean, another thing, Claire, here again is that we also see in the Daily Mail another shocking story that, as we all expect, hotels being shut, and the Conservatives a bit were doing this too, so let's not lay blame at just Labour's door, means that private rental accommodation is also being used, HMOs as houses of multiple occupancy. And, you know, I think there's a piece here with a family home in leafy suburbia being converted to house small boat migrants as government flounders. I mean, the problem is that Labour might think they'll get away with, as the Conservatives thought they would at times, get away with the idea of, oh, we close the hotel, but people will still be rightly outraged if they start seeing properties in their community basically being converted into housing for asylum, with all the potential, a crime that could potentially attract to those local areas, as well as just, obviously, people not wanting to live in a street where HMOs are popping up left, right and centre.
And we always have that problem, and you'll know from your time as a constituency MP that if you have any kind of university or further education establishment which houses students, you get arguments from local residents saying that students are too noisy. So people don't want them in general. I think people take great exception to those houses being taken over and refurbed very, very quickly to put asylum seekers in when there are homeless people and families in need of occupation that don't get the same kind of level of treatment. So I think that communities themselves feel that they don't have any say on it. They're having something forced upon them. And all the Labour government is doing is just moving the problem. And as you quite rightly said, the Conservative government did its own fair share of this. You can't keep moving the problem and thinking it'll go away, because local residents know their area, they know what's going on, and they are very vocal when they're unhappy.
Indeed. Well, look, Claire, thank you so much for joining us. That's Claire Pershaw there, former Conservative government advisor in the Home Office. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, we've had people texting, calling. Dennis here has texted in, Tories are as bad as this Labour rabble. Both parties had and have large majorities. Neither of them will get my vote. Clearly very cross there when it comes to how the small boats is being handled. Another one here from Keith in Shrewsbury. Hi, Jonathan. In a way, I hope Shabana Mahmood can't stop the boats. If she does, it will put Labour in a much stronger position. Double-edged sword, I'm afraid, but Farage will deport them all when he gets into number 10. Well, that's an interesting take. Do you want Shabana Mahmood to succeed? Are you worried that it might convince enough voters then to back Labour? I'll be honest, whoever's the government, I always want them to succeed because that's the government of our country. If they need to borrow and copy the homework of Reform UK, then so be it. But I still think when it comes to the election, people remember it was Reform UK who put forward the ideas, it was Reform UK who forced this Labour government to have to take action, and ultimately no one will want a Diet Coke in Keir Starmer. They'll want the full fat one instead with Nigel Farage, in my opinion, when it comes to this specific issue of tackling illegal and legal migration into this country. But you know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is how you call me, it's how you WhatsApp me, and it's how you voice note me. 87222 is how you text me with the word talk to start your message, as well as message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, more of your texts and calls.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis sitting in for Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense, that is Talk, and what a great show we've been having so far with you today. The big question, as you know, I pose to you at every segment of this show is simple. Will Labour's reshuffle stop the boats? Yes or no? 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp, voice note and call us. You can also text the word TALK to 87222 with your message to follow after, and message and follow us on X at talkTV. Well, let's get some of these texts. We've had another one here from David, who from Chelmsford. A possible solution to stop the ECHR and human rights lawyers interfering with the deportation of illegal small boat immigrants. When Border Force intercept the boats in our waters, take them to an offshore detention ship for processing. Don't let them land onto British soil. Another one here from Sarah in West Sussex. No reshuffle, Jonathan, will stop the boats. There isn't the talent or the will. Shabana Mahmood could have reinserted a clause to the immigration legislation that stated anyone who arrives illegally cannot apply for asylum. Starmer is a dead man walking, and the party is split into competing factions, each taking lumps out of the others. Great show. Well, that's very kind indeed. We have Stephen, who is in Manchester, who wants to talk to me about immigration. Hello, Stephen.
Well, not just immigration, but love listening to you. I think you've taken a step over from MP from 2019 till 2024. It's a pity you didn't say all this when you were in power, Jonathan.
Well, Stephen, I will say this. I was one of the most outspoken MPs. You only have to go through the things I said. I remember being the first MP to name a hotel, a small migrant boat hotel in the Stoke-on-Trent area, and got lambasted for it. I put down amendments. I even put down a private member's bill to say we should ignore the ECHR, which Sir Keir Starmer went and voted against. So I do think my track record on issues like immigration, as well as others, is very strong. I always encourage people to Google, search my Hansard, check my Facebook page to see what I've said in the past. But fair enough, I did still prop up the Conservative government. I still stood there by them. I ran on a Conservative ticket and rightfully had my backside, Stephen, handed to me at the last election because of the Conservative government's failure on this and other issues.
Have you noticed even there, I've not even tried to interrupt you. I didn't say that. I think you come across as someone that probably... Listen, when Keir Starmer said, we've costed everything, we've prepared for government and all that, and then they come up with their 8 manifesto points, and then quite clearly after about, less than a year, they just do a complete U-turn on most of it. Right. How do you expect people to believe in people like you, Jonathan? I'm struggling with that. In 2018, less than 300 people, check this, O&I figures, crossed the channel. Less than 300 people. I think it was 297, 298, something like that. 1 year into this Labour government, 52,000 people. Explain that to me. Come on.
Well, I think, Stephen, the problem is there is no explaining, is it? As you say, Labour came into power having said that they had a plan, they were going to change things, and lo and behold, it just seems like they had spent loads of times focus grouping on what to use in terms of slogans and not actually spend time in writing legislation, even if they wanted to go down a different approach to the Conservatives.
Is the problem that you get a 5-year term and all you care about is getting re-elected? I'm pretty sure you really cared about getting re-elected. You didn't. And I think that's actually sad and a shame, because I do think you're quite a decent politician.
Thank you.
But is the problem here is that, if say, look at Rayner. I love Angela Rayner to a point. She was amazing. She was fantastic, but she got too caught up in it.
I think, Stephen, just to answer...
What is it that Jarrell said to Superman? With great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. Why can't you lot handle that?
So I think the problem is, Stephen, it's a very good question. I think from my own experience, the problem is that you're constantly chasing, or leaders get caught up in chasing the 24-hour media news cycle rather than actually taking brave and bold decisions in the interest of the country for the longer term. Some things may take 5 to 10 years, and governments get so scared of doing that because ultimately they need to show now change in their minds within 2 years in order to try and get you to vote for them. But I don't think that treats the British public with respect.
But we're stuffed then, aren't we? Because if like Mayor Cooper, you've just admitted that, but we're stuffed then, because all politicians are going to care about is getting re-elected in 5 years' time.
No, indeed. And look, so there are decisions that need to be made, for example, with house building. So with house building, some politicians can't always be against house building in their communities, even if that does mean using some elements of the green belt, because we need more homes. The problem is that then we say one thing in Parliament, then you might say another in your constituency because you think that might help you get elected.
True or false, Jonathan? True or false? The Conservatives were building 1.25 million homes a year, roughly, give or take. Labour come and go, we're going to build 1.5 million. Sounds a lot better, doesn't it? They're about 170, 190 grand houses down on that, so they're not going to do it. So they've promised something that they're never going to be able to commit to. We have a housing secretary in Angela Rayner, who, by the way, I like her. I think it's amazing what she did, the way she brought herself up and that. He doesn't know anything about housing. We have a business minister who, by the way, lied about his legal thing. Let's not talk about that. We have a transport minister that was done for corruption. We have a corruption minister that was supposedly alleged involved in corruption in Bangladesh. Yeah. They're absolute muppets, aren't they?
No, indeed. Look, it's embarrassing and it's sad. And I think, to be honest with you, this is where I'm
giving you a really hard time here. I don't mean to.
No, you're not at all. No, Stephen, you're not at all. I think you're asking.
To you quite a few times on this channel, and I do like it. But the point I'm trying to make is that the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we just keep doing the same bad things over and over again and expecting a different result.
So,
it's not going to happen, is it?
I think, Stephen, when I entered Westminster, I felt I was quite a meek and mild kind of chap in terms of politics. I felt that the system's there, it needs tweaking, but ultimately, if you want to get things done, you can.
Listen, I Googled you before I had this conversation because in Jonathan Gullis, I kind of think I know what he looks like. And looked at it and I thought, well, I actually kind of like the look of him. I'm kind of that sort of person where I think, yeah, he's all right, do you know what I mean, right? But the point I'm trying to make is we've just had enough in this country.
No,
listen, I voted Labour in the last 3 elections. I can't vote for them ever again. I can't vote for the Tories. I'm not voting for Aquaman, even though Sir Ed Davey did absolutely brilliantly to bring them back.
I love that.
He brought them back from the brink of Nick Clegg, him with the Meta $10 million fame, right? Who am I going to vote for? I'm going to have to vote for Reform, aren't I? Because I can't vote for Zach Polanski.
No, look.
I mean, like, he makes Jeremy Corbyn look like, like a really reasonable guy.
Stephen, before I let you go, just very quick, because I want to make sure Matt from Cheshire gets on the line too. All I'll say is this. Having been in Parliament, what I realise is the system is absolutely broken. Politicians are not willing to be brave and bold enough. They're willing to say things behind closed doors, then they'll end up cowering away when it comes to taking tough decisions on the front line. I voted for things like increasing national insurance when Boris Johnson put it forward to have a carve-out in terms of trying to solve social care. I deeply regretted that choice, but I did it out of party loyalty. I should have been brave enough to join another 100 colleagues that did rebel and vote against it. It was after that, I think, I ended up becoming a pain in the backside to the former Chief Whip because I was willing to find ways forward. Yes, politics needs pragmatism. Yes, you don't have to be a purist, but you should be brave and bold enough to make decisions in the interest of the country and your community. And sometimes you have to put your country first and your community second on some very tough calls. But if it's going to bring about change in the long term, if it's going to improve the life chances and outcomes of the community that you serve, then that is in the interest. We need very radical change indeed. And like you, I'm waiting for someone to really show me that they're going to rip up the system and be bold and be radical. Matt from Cheshire. Sorry, Stephen, I just had to make sure I get Matt from Cheshire in. Thank you for your call and for your kind words. Matt from Cheshire, what do you think?
First of all, I'm in Greater Manchester. It's good to see the back of Jonathan Reynolds, Angela Rayner and Lucy Powell. People in my area know that they're totally incompetent and they're not even fit to be MPs, never mind ministerial positions. You mentioned earlier, what can Labour do to regain the trust of the public? Labour could deport every illegal immigrant in Britain and they'd still get obliterated at the next election.
Wow.
And the Conservatives could promise to put every single one of them behind bars before they're deported, and nobody would vote for them either. Trust has basically decayed over a 30-year period where everything that people have asked for has been spat back in the faces purposely, and everything they've wanted, the opposite has happened. So how is anybody ever meant to...
Well, Matt, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your call, just because I've got to make sure I hit the right second when it comes to tuning out for our ad break. But thank you for your call. You are in right. Trust has been completely eroded. That's why Nigel Farage is certainly benefiting with Reform UK, because people are saying we've tried Conservative, we've tried Labour, they overpromise, underdeliver, they say they've got plans, and then it turns out they haven't got a plan at all. When they do have a plan, it leads to more debt, it leads to higher taxes, it leads to less things working as well as they should do, and we've simply had enough, and we've got nothing to lose by taking a chance on Nigel Farage and Reform UK. It is a monumental challenge for Labour and Conservatives to overcome. Let's see if they can overcome it. One of the texts here from the Hills in southwest Wales. Labour won't stop the boat. It's not in their plan. They are enabling this as part of a wider remit. Next, digital ID. Tell us what you think after the break. I look forward to joining you with Saqib Bharti, Conservative MP, and see what he thinks on tackling the boats.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It is Jonathan Gullis here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk, sitting in for Ian Collins, an amazing Ian Collins that is, and I'm delighted to be taking the seat as we go through the final 2 hours of the show before handing you over to the Drive Time team. What a show we've been having so far, and what a reaction we've been getting so far from the big question of the day. Will Sir Keir Starmer's reshuffle finally stop the boats? Yes or no? This comes off the back of the fact that we have now seen over 30,000 small boat migrants arrive over 2025, up 37% on 2024, the fastest year ever on record to hit 30,000. That brings up to 52,000 in Labour's first year in office. What a shambles. But Sir Keir Starmer's now put Shabana Mahmood, who is allegedly a tough act in terms of wanting to take robust action, and has claimed that she is the do what it takes Home Secretary. Well, we will find out if the truth is in the pudding, if that's the right phrasing. If not, I'm sure you'll text in and tell me that I was being wrong. But I look forward to that as well. I'm starting to doubt myself there. But look, a lot of you have been saying no. A lot of you have been saying no. No matter what Labour does, they can't solve. In fact, one texter even went as far to say he hopes that Labour government doesn't succeed in stopping the votes in order to make sure that Sir Keir Starmer doesn't win the next general election. I can't agree with that view at all. But look, John from London's texting, Reform are in the driving seat right now and they will do very well in the election next May. It's hard to see any party that can beat them come the general election. Wow. Strong words there. And I have had a lovely text from Karen. I'm going to read it out because I don't normally get these, but it's nice to see. I get so fed up with people being mean about Kemi. If you were an employer, would you rather employ someone who understands the process and who takes the time to work through issues fully to get to a conclusion, or someone who has never been in a position before and is working from the back of a fag packet and telling you what you want to hear without doing the work? I know where my vote is. So even if you don't agree with Labour, you're not necessarily, some of you, willing to back Reform UK. Another one here regarding the Labour deputy leader potentially contest. Louise Haigh is supposedly putting herself forward. I think she's tweeted out an essay she's declared on the New Statesman website where she has said, basically outlined, it seems to me, very much her vision for Labour going forward. And what Lisa from Northern Ireland does so beautifully is, it says all when Labour are prepared to conveniently forget about Louise Haigh's criminal conviction of theft/fraud, whatever it was, to be their deputy leader. Well, I think that might come back to haunt them. And another one here, even if it does, I would never vote Labour. There is a strong saying that there is too much water under the bridge. That is indeed Martin. But we go to now Lenny in Ashford to get his views.
Good afternoon, Jonathan.
Hello, my sir. Hello, good sir. How are you?
I'm tickety-booed, thank you, sir.
I'm glad you're tickety-boo. Now, what do you think? You excited by the reshuffle? We're going to see a change here in this government?
Well, I've phoned up to tell you you shouldn't blame yourself for some of your actions that you've done in Parliament.
Thank you.
Because I truly believe the biggest problem with Parliament is the dispatch box is not fit for purpose.
Oh, interesting. And why is that?
Well, I mean, what I understand as a layman, that the dispatch box, a politician should be held accountable and he should be there to answer the questions totally and correctly.
Yep.
And basically, I only look at it being corrupt because it doesn't happen.
No, I think you've seen many times where Sir Keir Starmer has said things in the House of Commons chamber that, in my opinion, I think, and we can all say it, they are lies. And I've been amazed that he's not been pulled up by the Speaker for pushing certain things. And indeed, we even learned that, let's be honest, under the last Conservative government, with the Afghans who were being brought over secretly without us even knowing about that billions of pounds is being siphoned off in order to fund the extraction of Afghan nationals, bringing them to the UK, putting them up in accommodation, military accommodation, which means veterans or indeed serving personnel weren't able to access them, all behind our back. And that doesn't seem very fair and honest and truthful to me, does it?
No, I mean, and you can't expect us layman voters to have any confidence in any party or with our politicians as a whole when at the dispatch box they call one another honourable and there's no honour there one little bit.
Well, I think you make a very good point there, Lenny. Well, thank you so much for calling us. We really do appreciate that, and it's good to always get the listeners tuning in. We will hopefully join shortly by Saqib Bhatti, Conservative MP for Meriden and Solihull East. He's also the Shadow Minister for for schools in this shadow government Kemi Badenoch has set up. And bless him, he's been caught up in these damn tube strikes that's driving every Londoner mad because tube drivers want to just fill their greedy pockets when it's time to automate the tubes. Sack the tube drivers. I've had enough of you bloody lot boring us to death and taking more money whilst trying to pretend to freeze TfL fares. That means Stoke-on-Trent taxpayers are bailing out this failing London mayor. But anyhow, he's ready to go. He's down the line with us. And his name is Saqib Bhatti MP, Conservative Member of Parliament for Meriden and Solihull East. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm great. What a great introduction. Can I just say, it's not just Londoners who are upset. I'm from the Black Country, born in the Black Country, from the West Midlands. We're also very upset about these tube strikes. In our capital city, the amount of tube strikes we have to deal with. And, you know, I say sack the mayor.
Sack the mayor. Nice and clear and simple there. And that's what we want to hear from you, Saqib. Now, look, you, Saqib, may know something that I don't know, which is you may have come across Shabana Mahmood. For those who don't know, you were the former president of the Chambers of Commerce for Greater Birmingham. Obviously, Shabana Mahmood is a Birmingham MP. Therefore, you'd have interacted on a apolitical basis, neutrally that is, for listeners' sake, with MPs, with businesses and with other organisations across the country too. She has certainly given she's certainly been talked up by certain elements of the media as being part of Blue Labour, traditionally socially conservative. Many people also saying that she is one of the ones inside cabinet who's been saying we should be tougher on the ECHR. She even obviously put out the idea of chemically castrating paedophiles when she was in charge of prisons. She's done an interview today where she says she's going to do what it takes, Home Secretary. She'll suspend visas potentially with countries that won't take back foreign national offenders or illegal migrants. You know her maybe, Saqib, a bit better than I do. Is Shabana as tough as she sounds? Are you going to see a dramatic change? And if she does indeed start to smash the boats, smash the gags, will you welcome it?
Jonathan, I'm going to just say from the start, I don't attack Labour only on party political means. I want them to do better because I'm worried about the harm that is being done to the country on a daily basis. Every day I walk into Parliament and I worry about what Labour are going to put out. And so Shabana, all my interactions with her have always been courteous. She's always been civil. She's obviously a very intelligent woman if you look at her background. But you also have to look at what's actually going on in the wider context. And Keir Starmer did this reshuffle to take the news headlines away from the fact that his own Deputy Prime Minister had failed to pay enough tax. He did that, and Shabana's done exactly the right thing. Most of my reflections actually are from when I've been in Parliament, where she's obviously quite close to Keir Starmer. So what she's done is exactly what she had to do, what Keir Starmer would have wanted for her to do, is put headlines out there and talk tough on illegal migration. But the reality is she's still got Keir Starmer to answer to, and he is the fence sitter in chief. He cannot make a decision. He has no political philosophy. He U-turns on absolutely everything. I have no faith that the Labour Party will be able to get the issue of illegal migration under control, and that's why the Conservatives have to put their money where their mouth is, back our deportation bill and go and get this problem solved, because for the sake of the country we will do that.
Well, Shabana's first day saw 1,097 illegal migrants cross the English Channel on small boat. That takes it to over 30,000 in 2025, up 37% on 2024, when obviously half the year the Conservatives were in charge. It takes it to 52,000 since Labour came to power who crossed the Channel illegally, record-breaking, or smashing records rather than smashing gangs, so it seems. I mean, you're interested there. You say similar things to what I say, which is Shabana may talk tough. I personally haven't ever seen then the follow-through. Again, the chemical castration headline for paedophiles, great headline. Never actually saw it come to fruition. Shabana apparently willing to do something on the ECHR, but Sir Keir Starmer's already ruled out ever leaving the ECHR. Of course, we'll find out from the Conservatives at party conference what they plan to do when it comes to the European Convention of Human Rights. So, I mean, and ultimately, as you say, she answers to Sir Keir Starmer. So you're saying Shabana can talk all she wants. Even if she wants to go further, she'll never be able to do it because Sir Keir Starmer won't allow it to happen.
Completely. And also there's a fundamental issue with all of this, which is I think the British people, whether it's on illegal migration, whether it's on paedophiles or sentencing of criminals, it all comes down to the fact that they want fairness. They want equality under the law, and they want for fairness. You know, we are a really, really tolerant country, but everyone's patience is really, really being tested. And the fundamental issue is number 10 Downing Street, Keir Starmer, his people, they do not understand that. This whole reshuffle, they were forced into it. 3-4 days after phase 2 had been launched. I mean, who would have thought it, right? Are we in phase 3 now, Jonathan? Can you tell me?
I don't know. I don't think any of us knows, to be honest with you.
Well, this is the problem. And if they don't know where they're going, and if Keir Starmer, doesn't stand for anything, he stands for nothing, he will fall for anything, as the old saying goes. And so how is the country able to believe that they will follow through on anything that they say if the goalposts keep moving? And as you know, Jonathan, because you were a government minister, when reshuffles happen, it takes time for ministers to get on top of their briefs, get their feet under their table. This reshuffle was forced upon upon them. They had no choice because they were falling apart, and that's the reality of it. And look at the scale of it. And now Keir Starmer's going to have huge discipline issues. He's going to have to figure out, the fundamental issue around the economy is still there. Bond yields are still really, really high, and they've come off the most recent highs at the moment. But I think the fundamental direction of travel is still where it was 2-3 weeks ago, and he's still got to get to grips with that. And Rachel Reeves is still in charge of the economy, or so we think.
Well, actually, interesting you say that, because since Angela Rayner's exit from government, I mean, I'm still amazed that she wasn't sacked. The fact that she was able to walk, I think, is a concern in itself, because Nadeem Zahawi certainly was on the receiving end of a sacking for an offence to where he broke the ministerial code. But look, businesses are saying, now Angela Rayner's gone, come on, Sir Keir Starmer, let's be sensible. Workers' rights bill, put it in the trash can. I think Conservatives are certainly saying that as well today. Again, you are someone from a background of small, medium-sized family business. I think you and your father worked together in financial services, so you understand what it's like to employ people, to deal with the highs and the lows that can come with that, as well as obviously trying to make the books balance whilst trying to obviously be a successful business. This workers' rights bill, is it just a complete disaster? Is it now the right time for Sir Keir Starmer to use Rayner's departure from government to do the right thing for the economy and for business and dump this bill?
This bill is an epic disaster of gargantuan proportions, right? This is, and to be clear, Jonathan, I worked in my family business, and I'm a chartered accountant. My father had set up a business in the early 80s, and our whole lives were dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs and family business owners. This bill is indiscriminate in the way it attacks anyone who has any aspiration, any desire to go out there, take a risk, be an entrepreneur, create jobs, create wealth. This bill is absolutely destroying any sense of ambition or opportunity. The only people who are benefiting from this are the trade unions, and of course we can wonder why the Labour Party want to support them, and that's why the trade unions have come out today saying do not touch this bill. This bill is an epic disaster of gargantuan proportions. It will only perpetuate more uncertainty, which means businesses will start to invest less. They already are. I've just seen a report today. They are going to have higher levels of unemployment, and they will recruit less. I've seen that today as well. That's out in the headlines today. And so we go into the next budget in a huge economic quandary that has been wholly created by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. They talked down the economy. They thought they could pull a fast one by talking about a 22 billion black hole, and they've willed and created a 50 billion pound black hole by themselves.
Absolutely, Sakib. As you say, I mean, it's quite farcical now, that 22 billion pound black hole, when we estimate a 50 billion pound black hole incoming. Although Rachel Reeves thinks that estimate's too high. Well, sorry, Rachel, if it's a bit higher than you want. The fact is, you've still left a black hole, which is going to mean more taxes, and obviously then with this bill, more regulation. It's going to be a disaster for businesses. Now, we also see that Rachel Reeves is now, I mean, this is just madness, considering to having a national insurance raid on GPs in the hope that that would somehow give her 2 billion to whatever black hole it is that she needs to fill. Let's be honest, it's definitely going to be north of 20 billion. I mean, how on earth does this match up with the whole we're fixing the NHS?
Doesn't, and this is the fundamental issue. If I challenge any one of your viewers, after post-COVID, we all know how hard it was to get a GP appointment, and things are starting to to be honest, we the Conservatives had put all the investment in. The economy was growing, inflation was at 2%. Tough decisions were being made, but it was all to get us back onto an even keel. And when we came into government, when we came into opposition, Labour came into government. They threw loads of money at doctors and whatnot. And now that was a short-term fix, and now actually what's happening is we are seeing the consequences of that, because there is no free money. There is no there is no way where you can fix this just by throwing huge amounts of cash at it. That's taxpayers' money that they've gone and wasted. And now you've got doctors threatening strikes. You've got GPs now being told they might have to pay national insurance. Where is that money going to be taken away from? It's going to be taken away from patients. It's going to mean less money for appointments. That means you and I and all your viewers are going to find it even harder to get appointments. That is what a Labour government delivers, and that's exactly what a Conservative government would fight against.
I agree with you. I'm very deeply concerned, for example, mental health nurses that some people may have hired for their GP practice. Would they, for example, have to be sacrificed in order for GPs to balance the books? Would it see, as you say, a reduction in GPs being available? I know some GPs already looking to sell up and in order to escape the incoming tax bombshell that's coming. I mean, you would argue we've already seen the impact of slapping ever higher national insurance on small, medium-sized businesses with the jobs tax that come in. By putting this on GPs, it's only going to exacerbate the economy and the situation even worse, isn't it?
Absolutely, and those national insurance rises on businesses will ultimately, some businesses tried to do the right thing, from what I hear. They tried to absorb it, but ultimately businesses have to make a profit to be sustainable and for the long term, and therefore they invest less, they create less jobs, and unemployment's gone up as a result of that. But it also means some of those costs will get passed on to consumers, which is why we're seeing above average inflation at the moment. And the British Retail Consortium is worried about 6% inflation by the end of the year. I mean, these are huge numbers, and these are real numbers that people at home, hard-working families, are going to suffer. And it's all because Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer came in playing student union politics, and they've really, really made a hash of our economy. And that's why, when we left government, 2% inflation, fastest growing economy in the G7. We were investing huge amounts. I was a tech minister. We were attracting tens of billions almost on a weekly basis. All of that is drying up, and that is a Labour government for you.
So, if I can push back on one thing, Labour might say, for example, but we've had 5 interest rate cuts since we've came into power, so that shows that they're fixing the foundations, as they would say, of the economy. What would your response be to that?
My response would be, look at the projections of the interest rate cuts when we left government. There was meant to be more, and because now inflation is higher, the Bank of England will have to look twice and think twice before they have to do any more interest rate cuts. And that's the consequence of this. We've had fewer interest rate cuts projected and existing versus what was projected at the end of July last year. That's what was coming down the road. In the whole game on this is inflation. And frankly, in the UK, there are 2 wealth destroyers. There is inflation, and then there are Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. 3 wealth destroyers, if I want to count it properly.
Well, Sagib, I would then like to just comment on the topic very quickly before we finish. Nadine Dorries, quite sensationally defected from the Conservative Party to Reform UK. I'd love to just quickly get a reaction to Nadine's departure. And do you agree with her when she says the Conservative Party is dead?
Wish Nadine well. I didn't really know her very well. I think the last conversation I had with her was when she was lobbying me really, really hard for me to vote for the online safety bill, which she had created, right? She wanted my vote at that time, so I remember that was a conversation I had with her. But I didn't really know her very well, so I wish her well. But on this issue, she is fundamentally wrong. The Conservative Party are the party of opposition. Yes, we've got a lot of trust to rebuild. There is no doubt on that. But, I think it's fair to say Nadine's been disenfranchised for a while. She's obviously hugely close to Boris Johnson, and she said something about Boris coming to reform and whatnot, and now Zia and Nigel Farage have said absolutely not, no Boris Johnson. So I don't know where that leaves her now, to be honest, because that was a big campaigning tool the last couple of years. But look, I wish her well.
There was certainly a mixed reaction. I was there at Reform Conference from the members regarding Nadine's defection, and obviously I think the proof in the pudding came when obviously she then came out and said that Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson should put their egos aside, come together and build an alliance. I mean, would you like to see an alliance between Reform UK and the Conservatives in order to guarantee that we can stop Sir Keir Starmer being in government, or do you think this is again just fanciful thinking?
If I'm honest with you, 1 minute Nigel Farage is talking about nationalisation, the next minute he's a Thatcherite, the next minute he wants to get rid of the 2-child benefit cap. On migration, he basically did a copy and paste job of our deportation bill. 1 minute he wants to deport women and children, the next minute he doesn't, and now he does again. I'd like to know what their actual policy platform is. I'm not sure they stand for anything. And my worry, actually, on a even more serious note than what I've just said, is anyone who votes for Reform will be incredibly disappointed, because they're promising all sorts of things, and either they do it and there'll be a run on the pound, or because it's all unfunded, by the way, the numbers and the maths don't add up, or they'll get into government if they're successful in everything they're trying to do, and the consequence will be that they'll be told it's not possible, and then they'll back off and people will be left disenfranchised, etc. So I think there's a huge amount of mileage to go yet. We know what we stand for. We'll be putting our policy platform out there. People are right to be pushing us to say, look, well, what is it you're going to do on different issues? That will come, but we have the answers. But we will always do everything on sound finances. The economy matters, because everything right now is about the cost of living and the amount of money people have in their pockets, and the fact that we actually need a smaller state because the government needs to get out of the way so businesses can create and innovate, they can create jobs, they can create wealth, they can take risks, and we need to allow them to do that.
Saqib Bharti, Conservative MP for Solihull and Meriden, and Solihull East. Thank you so much for joining us, and also Shadow Minister of State for Education. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think there? Saqib Bharti certainly putting forward the Conservatives' plan for taking back the control of the government. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222 and message and follow us on X at talkTV. We'll see you soon.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis here for Ian Collins on the home of Common Sense, that is Talk. And you have been texting, you've been calling, and we've had some reaction from here. Gav in Cornwall, who says, your Tory guest, that's Saqib Bharti MP, portrayed all that is wrong with the Tories. Don't they realise we just don't trust them anymore? Nobody is listening to them. They betrayed us. Northern here. Here's the problem, Jonathan. No one wants to pay more tax because no one trusts Conservatives or Labour governments to spend it wisely. Jonathan, is this the Conservative show today? Are you trying to revamp them? Rewards for failures. That's from Richard in Leicester. Well, look, at the end of the day, Richard, I can assure you, we actually had a Reform person booked on. They sadly had to pull out. I've tried a number of the people in Reform UK I know and the producers know to invite them onto the show to let them have their say, as well as Liberal Democrats and Labour. I like to use this show to make sure all voices and opinions are heard, and I believe that Saki Party has every right, just as any other Reform MP, Labour MP, Lib Dem, Green MP would, to come on this show and express their views, have their swings at their political opponents, and be held to account too. I would come back to the fact that Saki Party made the point. He knows they got a shellacking in the last general election. I know that because I was sacked by the electorate of Stoke-on-Trent North. So at the end of the day, I think the humble pie is being eaten, and at the end of the day, it's for the Conservatives to revamp themselves. I've been very critical of the Conservative Party. I've been very critical of the lack of action that I think we've seen so far. So I don't believe that I've been overly promoting the Conservatives. That's for them to do at the end of the day. Another one here. We should get results within weeks if this new Home Secretary is any good. Can't just blame the Prime Minister. That's in relation to Shabana Mahmood, who is now taken over the role of Home Secretary, who's been talked up and talked tough. Another one here from Gareth, who says Suella Braverman was one of the best Home Secretaries, and look how that ended for her. She was outspoken and the Tories sacked her. Well, before we go to our next break, let's get Ian in London's views on what he thinks about Sir Keir Starmer. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Jonathan. Right. I think I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think Sir Keir Starmer has played a blinder with Mahmood.
Oh, here we go.
Right? No. It's a sarcastic way.
Oh, Ian, you got my hopes up then, Fred. Go on.
Right. He's put somebody who voted against the Palestinian thing, right, that they want to make it illegal. Now he's put her in a position that she's either got to stop the boats or she's out. So basically, he's got a double-edged sword that she can't win. If she doesn't stop the boats, she's out. And it's another one that he's put down to the guillotine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. And do you think Sir Keir Starmer's that ruthless? Do you think he just is so self-obsessed and self-absorbed that he's willing to sacrifice as many of his MPs as possible to try and save his own skin?
Oh, absolutely. I think he lives in cuckoo land. He really does live up there. You know, I would say it's like his football team. They're deluded, right? But it's that sort of way with him. And it's like, you know, today they came out with, oh, we've cut the foreign budget. Oh, brilliant. Why? Because he's got no money in the kitty. Otherwise, they'd still be doing the foreign budget.
I think you make some very fair points. Ian from London, thank you so much for calling in. And you can be like Ian, 0344 499 1000 is how you call, WhatsApp and voice note. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And you can follow messages on X at talkTV. After the break, I'll be joined by David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange and former Met Detective Chief Inspector, to talk about Sir Mark Rowley saying it's time for legislation so we can stop policing tweets and instead police the streets. But do we really need another law? We'll find out shortly.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the amazing Ian Collins here on the home of common sense. That is Talk, and what a show we've been having so far. And just so you are aware, breaking news that's taking place right now is Francois Bayrou. He is the French Prime Minister, not to be confused with Emmanuel Macron, who's the French President, is currently addressing the French Parliament in a bid to save his premiership, as there is a vote of no confidence in him taking place later today. Why does that matter? Well, it wouldn't normally matter to us, apart from the fact that Sir Keir Starmer did a deal with the French government to obviously have the so-called one in, one out when it came to tackling illegal migration. What that really means is that we take one out and we take 17 in, 94% chance of staying in this country if you come via small boat instead of being deported. However, so if Francois Bayrou falls and his government therefore collapses, will that mean an end to Sir Keir Starmer's deal with France? Does that mean that despite Shabana Mahmood saying that she plans to, and I quote, imminently return people who have come across the channel illegally to France, is about to go up in flames, and that will be another nail in the coffin of Sir Keir Starmer when it comes to handling the small boats? Because my big question of the day, ladies and gentlemen, to remind you, is this: will Labour's reshuffle finally stop the boats? Yes or no? Well, the answer that I want to hear from you is how to be shared with me is by calling 0344 499 1000. You can also WhatsApp and voice note us on that number too. You can text the word talk to 87222 and with your message following after that. And you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Well, let's go to some more of our texts. Mark's texting, can anyone think of a situation where an illegal act is promoted with the provision of money, accommodation and other benefits with the exception of migration? A very good question there. John from Rotherham's texting, what you fail to realise is that many Reform voters and members like me who refuse to be vaccinated agree with the doctor who said there is an increase in cancer. Do the research. That's regarding the doctor who spoke at Reform UK conference. Another one here, Martin, the only way to stop the boats is to have a border force to intercept small boats and turn them round. We need out of the ECHR. Even if Labour do that, I will never, ever vote Labour. Nigel for PM next. Another one here from Henry who says, great show. Henry from Suffolk. Thank you so much, Henry. Don't send the migrants to Rwanda or the Ascension Islands. Much simpler and closer to home solution. We build modular platoons with safe but basic accommodation and situate about 3 miles offshore near those lovely taxpayer-funded wind turbines. Basically a floating island, not cheap, but cheaper than now. It would be safe and humane. Security would be good as most people can't swim 3 miles. It wouldn't be so nice during the winter storms, still safe, but importantly would act as a deterrent. It is scalable and compared with what is happening now, it would be relatively cheap. We have shown that we can build Nightingale hospitals and Mulberry harbours when we have the will. It is the perfect solution. Keep it offshore, safe, humane and workable. Henry there from Suffolk with his idea. What do you think? Well, let's go to my next guest. His name is David Spencer. He's the head of crime and justice at the Policy Exchange, a very good think tank indeed, and the former Met Detective Chief Inspector. Hello, David. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jonathan. Good to see you.
I'm good, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us, because this is an amazing story. I'm quite baffled, so maybe I'm wrong. So please do tell me, David, if I am so, which is, so Mark Rowley is basically begging the government to legislate in order for him to be able to tell police officers to stop policing tweets and police the streets instead. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Surely that decision can be made by a police commander or a chief inspector, or a chief constable, sorry, as Sir Mark Rowley is, and he can just simply tell his troops on the ground, unless there is serious terrorism, a serious threat to life, or indeed stalking and harassment online by, you know, some vile man towards a woman potentially happening online, use your common sense, deal with knife crime, deal with theft from shops, deal with phone robberies, deal with antisocial behaviour. That's where the public need to see you. That's what they pay their taxes for. Do we need another law?
Well, you're broadly correct here. Police officers and police chiefs in particular have broad discretion as to what it is their officers focus their time and energy on. So we've seen that time and again through the debates on what's called police operational independence. We've seen it through court cases and various other things. Essentially, chief constables have wide discretion as to what their officers focus their time and energy on. And the reality is, as you've said, and indeed ministers have been saying, and Policy Exchange have said in recent times, ultimately what policing needs to be doing is focusing on policing the streets rather than policing tweets. And that's absolutely right. And the reality is, this is what we know the public want to see happen as well. So Policy Exchange did some research earlier this year looking at public attitudes towards policing and crime. And what they overwhelmingly say is that the police need to focus on a tougher approach to crime and to criminals. And what they mean is knife crime, people who are out robbing the members of the public, people out doing burglaries, shoplifting, those sorts of things. That is what the public want the police to be focused on time and again. Now, that's not to say that there aren't elements of the legislation around the Public Order Act, for example, that may well need to be tweaked around free speech provisions. It is sensible for the government to look at that. But the main issue here is actually how the police are choosing to go about their work.
Well, it is amazing, isn't it? As you say, sorry, I'm just flabbergasted that Sir Mark Rowley just wants more legislation. In fact, if my time in Parliament, what I learned was that there was too much legislation that constantly kept confusion about which laws did what and where was their overlap, and it meant judicial reviews were becoming more and more common because the law was actually gaining more uncertainty rather than actually what governments, I think, should be doing, which is slimming down legislation, updating legislation, merging legislation where necessary. I mean, is this surely is just going to look like Sir Mark Rowley's passing the buck, isn't it?
I think that's a fair assessment. And indeed, we at Policy Exchange wrote about that just last week, in fact. And the thing is, this is a tactic that we see from senior people in the police all the time. And we particularly see it around protest, for example. So yeah. Particularly around Parliament Square. There's a huge amount of legislation that is designed to protect our elected representatives, elected governments, to be able to go about their work. Time and again, we've seen, unfortunately, the police not necessarily enforcing the law in the way they could do around Parliament. And as a result, we see some of the ridiculous scenes with our elected representatives being impeded from going about their duties. And the reality is, again, this comes down to a choice by the police and by police commanders. And the reality is they already have, in the main, the powers that they need from Parliament. This is about how they choose to go about their work day to day.
Absolutely, indeed. And there's another story that has also caused a lot of outrage. I think The Sun doing great work in uncovering the fact that Sir Robert J., a judge, has sparked fury when he sympathised with al-Qaeda fiend Haroon Aswat 50, who will be released from hospital to Yorkshire. Despite police fears, he remains a threat. The reason he is an important individual is because he had a mastermind role in the 7/7 bombings, which saw, in 2005, innocent men, women and children maimed or indeed murdered by those terrorist atrocities on the streets of London, attacks on tubes and on buses. He has served all his jail time and is due to be released to his family in Batley, West Yorkshire, at a date yet to be announced. He confessed to the 2005 London outrage and the role in the 9/11 atrocity in 2001. But he is set to be freed without ankle tag monitoring because of a loophole which forbids checks on psychiatric payments. And Aswat, who was threatening to kill Christians, Jews and Muslim enemies as recently as 2022, will walk free with the warm wishes of Justice J. Nigel Farage has come out, leader of Reform UK, calling the judge to be sacked, and Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has said the Pally remarks were an insult to the 52 people who died in 2005. It's quite a jaw-dropping thing to be said, where I think he said, here we go, the legal submission in the 65-year-old judge asked, Mr. Aswat, is there anything you'd like to say? How are you feeling? I'm good. Mr. Justice J, OK. You feel stable on your treatment? Aswat, yes. When you're released, you're going to go back to your family, I think, in Yorkshire? Yes. Mr. J, OK, and you understand what these requirements are. I have read through all the paperwork. Yes, OK, you probably want to put all this behind you now. Indeed, I do. Mr. Justice J, it could not have been too pleasant being in American custody all that time. I mean, what's going on? This is ridiculous.
Well, I, like you and many others, struggle to find any sympathy for this man's time in custody, whether it's in the UK or the United States. And I'm quite sure that the victims and the families of those who died on 7/7 will probably feel very similar. I think there's a real concern here. The reality is that these most serious offenders, whether they're terrorists or others, there's a real question about whether these people should ever be allowed to be walking back on our streets. And certainly I'd be deeply concerned about this person not being in some form of custody for the rest of their life, potentially. I think certainly terrorists and very, very serious criminals, we need to look at how we're dealing with these people in terms of the amount of time they're spending behind bars and, if necessary, for the rest of their lives. In relation to the judge himself that made this, it just seems utterly bizarre. And you've got to really wonder whose side various public servants are on when you hear these sorts of comments. It's a very, very strange comment for a judge to have made.
There's such serious mistrust, disunity in this country when it comes to our judiciary, when it comes to our police, mainly because of those in authority, leaders in those sectors. I don't ever attack cops who patrol the streets. I think they're just following the orders of their superiors. And with judges in these very privileged positions, doing things like that just further undermines credibility and really risks a very important part of our democracy, which is an independent judiciary which we trust and believe that they apply the law without any prejudice or personal views. Another one here, obviously almost 900 arrests at pro-Palestine Action protest in London. This is people who were protesting against the prescription of Palestine Action, a terrorist organisation as now they are, just prescribed, who obviously broke onto that MOD base and attacked the aircraft, causing millions of pounds worth of damage and undermining the security of this nation. I obviously, as you can tell, David, have no qualms with all these arrests going on. I think that those people who broke onto that military base were fortunate not to be shot on sight for entering illegally onto a military base. This is obviously taking up, however, a lot of police time. These continued mass demonstrations on the streets of London will drag cops out of other areas into London. Do you think it's time that, serious action's taken? First of all, is it right that the police are arresting these people? Did the government maybe overstep, some people would argue here, in prescribing Palestine Action? Or is it time just to ban these hate marches, I would call them, David, personally, all together, so that the cops from other areas aren't being dragged into police London?
Well, first things first, let me be clear that I think that the way that the police have approached these protests in relation to Palestine Action and the large numbers of arrests, I think the Metropolitan Police have done an excellent job here. The reality is Palestine Action is a prescribed terrorist organisation, and as is very clear in the legislation, expressing support for a terrorist organisation is unlawful, and the police are absolutely right to be making these arrests, and I commend the Metropolitan Police for doing so. In relation to this organisation themselves, I think we need to remember there's not only incidents such as the one that you talk about where they broke onto an RAF base, there are other incidents where, for example, police officers have been very seriously injured, and this is a group, let us not be in any doubt, who are seeking to influence government and intimidate the public or sections of the public and to advance a political cause. And that very, very clearly comes under Section 1 of the Terrorism Act 2000. So I think the police absolutely took the right action here, and they should continue doing so as long as this carries on. In terms of whether the marches should continue, well, the legislation actually, it's pretty difficult to prevent a march completely under the legislation. But actually what we have seen is the police taking increasing steps to restrict protests to places where they will not disrupt Parliament and not disrupt people going about their lives. And certainly on those occasions when the police have done so, they've done an excellent job. And I think we probably need to see more of that than we've seen over the last couple of years to date.
Well, look, David Spencer, the Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange and former Met Detective Chief Inspector, thank you so much for joining us today. What do you think? Is Sir Mark Rowley passing the buck by asking for new laws to be introduced in order to stop the streets, to stop policing tweets and therefore be able to police the streets? Do you think that this vile 7/7 terrorist scumbag should be allowed to walk the streets, or should he be locked up forever? And Do you support the police and this government in making sure that over now 900 people were arrested at the weekend for supporting prescribed terrorist group Palestine Action? Is it time to ban the hate marches who simply want to intimidate the Jewish community and those of us who support Israel in the fact that they are trying to just simply survive? 0344 499 1000 is how you can WhatsApp, call and voice note. 87222 is how you text with the word talk at the starting message, as well as follow and message us on X at talkTV. We'll see you after the break.
It's interesting that immigration has fallen a lot in the past couple of years. We had the so-called Boris wave, and it's now dropped off quite a lot. But the kind of as a topic in the media,
well, wasn't it about a year ago? It was sort of the last calendar year, wasn't it? Still in the sort of ballpark of 800,000.
I think my understanding is it's about halved from the levels that it previously was. I think it's certainly fair to say that, you know, depending on, you know, people will have different views on what the right level is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis sitting in for Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. What a great show we've been having, getting your views on many different things. For example, Sir Keir Starmer's reshuffle the deck. Does that mean he'll finally be able to stop the boats? That's the big question for the day. I want some voice notes. So voice note 0344 499 1000 with your answer to that question. Will you, if Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, succeeds, will you thank her? Will you reward Labour with your vote at the ballot box, or are they dead as a dodo as far as you are concerned already politically? Then, of course, we've been looking at Sir Mark Rowley wants us to legislate for new laws to say that the police should be on the streets not monitoring our tweets. But isn't there just common sense? Isn't it just a case that the police can already do that? Is Sir Mark Rowley just simply passing the buck? Well, let us know what you think on that too, as well as the fact that 7-7 Mastermind is about to be, terrorist scumbag is about to be released. Head back to Batley in Yorkshire, where he's from, even though he recently in 2022 threatened to see Jews, Christians and Muslim enemies killed. Do we really think this man should be allowed out on our streets? Shouldn't he be remaining in this psychiatric unit that he was already locked up in just for the safety of this nation? The fact that he's not even being monitored on tag because he's a psychiatric patient should scare us all. And then, of course, We've got the Labour Deputy Party leadership going on. Do you care? And if you do care, who would you like to see? Do you think that maybe Sir Keir Starmer's going to get a kick up the backside from a new deputy leader? Will they get a John Prescott type who let Tony Blair in check with the left? Or do you think that it doesn't matter because Sir Keir Starmer is so bad at politics, a human rights lawyer first and foremost, that it's doomed to fail from the start? 0344 499 1000 is how you text. WhatsApp. You call us and voice note us, voice note being the operative word there. You can also text the word talk to 87222 with your message to follow after. And you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Well, we've got Kevin from Portsmouth on the phone who wants to talk about shoplifting and immigration. Hello, Kevin.
Good afternoon, Jonathan. Yes, Sir Mark Rowley wants more laws. How about enforcing the ones we've got? How about the government enforcing the ones we've got? Let us look at the illegals, okay? They're coming across the channel on vessels that are seaworthy. We have every right to turn unseaworthy vessels. They're coming across and their journey is not innocent. That's the United Convention of the Sea. I forget which area it's drawn up. Innocent travel is you've got papers, you're coming over to be a tourist, and eventually you're going to go home again at the end of your stay. Okay, this lot aren't innocent, so we could turn them back at the border. If you fly in with incorrect or dodgy papers, what happens? You get detained and you get put on the next flight back from whence you came. Now, difficult to get the next flight back on a boat because they came from France, but they're not French. We can certainly detain them and leave them there until we can figure out what to do with them. And if that takes decades, tough.
And Kevin, you've heard that Shabana Mahmood is allegedly going to open up the fact that the Labour government is prepared to use former MOD sites in order to detain, or at least house people who have crossed, or illegal migrants, sorry, who have crossed the English Channel illegally, rather than continuing to use hotels. Does that give you some confidence that Labour's getting back on track?
Absolutely not. Because she's talking about housing them, she's not talking about detaining them. Detaining them means they are in a secure compound and they can't go wandering around the local town, annoying and intimidating people. They're locked up.
And if they did do that, Kevin, would you give them credit?
Yes, absolutely. And I think any right-thinking person would give them credit, because they're instantly, if these people were detained and they were never going to get released until either they go back from to their country of origin or they die, there'd be no reason to come across the water. Labour will never do that in a million years because of all the human rights stuff. And by the way, our new Home Secretary is caught between a rock and a hard place. Because if she's successful and stops the boat, she's going to get a fatwa from the Muslims. If she's unsuccessful and doesn't stop the boat, she's going to get a fatwa from Keir Starmer. So she's stuffed either way.
Well, Kevin from Portsmouth, thank you so much for that call. I do think Shabana Mahmood's in between a rock and a hard place, because I think that we hear a lot of briefing that she's willing to be very tough and do some of the more unthinkable things, as it were, to Labour politicians. But Sir Keir Starmer's her boss. At the end of the day, he will never let it go as far as he needs to. One, because he is a human rights lawyer first and foremost, and two, he just doesn't have any natural political instinct in his body. And even if they do well, and I think the expectation now is they'll have to literally stop the boats in order to regain the trust of the British people. And if they do that, then I think Reform UK will have questions to answer, and that will potentially impact their momentum. But I think it's looking increasingly unlikely. We've had Joanna here from Salisbury text in about Mark Rowley, who she says is part of the don't look there, look over here to focus on news headlines brigade. He doesn't need a law. He's in control of operations. It's just to keep our minds busy looking somewhere else and looking for someone else to blame. Joanna, I think that makes great sense there. We've got Sean from Gloucester texting in. It makes no difference how much Sir Keir Starmer shuffles things around. We are now no longer listening to all his lies, and we don't like and there's a naughty word that I won't use. They just need to go before they do any more damage. Sean certainly encapsulating the anger and the mood of the British people out there. We've got Ashley from London who wants to talk about Palestine action. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, afternoon. My point really just was that all these people knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew they were going to get arrested, and they've been sent out there like lemmings to to make their point. They didn't have to put action at the bottom of their signs. They knew exactly what. So, you know, they've been told to disrupt the police, overrun them, cause problems, and obviously there's been some violence as well. The thing that makes me laugh about all this really is that it's very much like a Hamas strategy, isn't it? Right? You know, the bosses of this organisation are sitting there sipping probably some form of drink in their home.
Chai latte, I bet you, Ashley. Chai latte with their avocado on toast that's got some almond butter. How you milk an almond, I don't know. But hey, almond butter on there with some chili flakes and some poached egg. Oh, can't think of anything worse.
Yeah, exactly. And they're sitting there watching all these people actually getting into trouble and potentially ruining their lives on his behalf. Where he sits there, much the same as Hamas do in Turkey and in Qatar, enjoying a very nice lifestyle and just lets everyone else run with it and gets into trouble. It's just absolutely bonkers. That I mean, where is he? If he feels that strongly about it, why is he not sitting out there with the sign and getting arrested? Why? Because he doesn't want to get into trouble, right? You know, and it just kind of sums the whole situation up for me. It really does. I just think it's ridiculous.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Ashley. I was at a wedding of a friend of mine up in Lake District, and there were the Palestine protesting brigade out and about in force. We had to ask them to move to make sure the bride could enjoy her wedding day and get some nice photos without that ridiculous flag that continues to be shoved in everyone's faces all across the country. Yet when that was up there, no one was kicking off. But God forbid you put a St. George's flag or Union flag and everyone suddenly loses their mind if you're in a position of authority like Birmingham City Council. Well, I tell you what, the people are fighting back. Enough is enough. Ban the hate marches. I'm sick of Jews being intimidated on the streets. I'm sick of those who are pro-Israel being intimidated for correctly saying that Israel has a right to exist. And I'm sick to death of people pushing the Palestine flag, which has now become an act of political symbolism rather than an act of recognising a Palestinian state. It's boring. You're boring if you do it. Go and find somewhere. Go and get some real butter. Go and get something like bacon butty to wash down your lunch, your brew, rather than your chai latte. Oh, couldn't think of anything bloody worse. Well, after the break, we've got more great news into the final hour before I hand over to the Drive team. We'll have Brendan Chilton, Labour councillor and former chair of Labour Leave, joining us. 0344 499 1000. If you want to WhatsApp us, text 87222 or message and follow us on X at talkTV. I will see you after the break. Get your brew.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis sitting in for Ian Collins here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk, into the final hour of our show today before handing over to Petri, who will take you through drive time and will do an amazing job with it too. We have had a great show and you know what to do. 0344 499 1000 if you want to call us, WhatsApp us, and voice note, please. I love a voice note. You get some great ones there, normally get me giggling too. Text the word TALK at the start of your message to 87222, and you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. The big question: will Labour's reshuffle finally stop the boats? Yes or no? I want to hear from you. Well, we go to our next guest. His name is Councillor Brendan Chilton. He is a Labour councillor and former chair of Labour Leave. Hello, Brendan. How are you?
Good afternoon, my friend. Very nice to be with you.
Well, lovely to be with you. Now, Brendan, you may have heard my rant on air saying that, you know, sort of attacking, as I do sometimes, the left jokingly, although some people don't take it as a joke, the chai latte slurping, avocado on sourdough toast with almond butter brigade, as I once said in the House of Commons. You're not one of those, are you, Brendan? I think you're pretty sound.
Oh, I'm a turmeric latte man. No, joking. My personal trainer wishes I was an avocado man. Unfortunately, I fail really well on all of that.
No, well done. Don't worry, I failed too, Brendan, so we could both join in that one together. Look, Brendan, obviously big news regarding Labour in particular with this deputy leadership contest now formally underway. A lot of controversy around the fact that the National Executive Committee said that the 80 signatures, a lot indeed. I can tell you what, that is going to be hard work, especially when some MPs, I will shock horror, sign multiple bits of paper so they can be everyone's friend. Those duplicitous so-and-so always get found out, just so you know, for those Labour MPs thinking of doing such a trick. We've got Louise Haigh in the New Statesman today, sort of what I would say, certainly launching a pitch for that position. We've had Emily Thornberry on the some of the media around yesterday, where she certainly seemed to be dipping her toe into that water, and Dr. Rosina Ali Khan is being rumoured to be interested too. I mean, first of all, is there, Brendan, a particular MP you would like to see run? Is there a favourite of yours that you would hope would put themselves in a position? Or are you happy with the rules? Does it feel like a bit of a stitch-up, or do you think Keir Starmer's right to get this over and done with quickly as possible to avoid any internal sideshow that they maybe witnessed with the Conservatives in the last Parliament?
So I think a speedy deputy leadership election is needed. We should not be looking inwards as a party. We should be focusing on delivering our manifesto and trying to get our economy growing. And if we're sidetracked by a long deputy leadership contest, talking to ourselves is not what we need to be doing right now. We need to be listening to voters, as the polls are showing us. In terms of my personal preference for candidates, obviously there'll be a few more names coming out over the next few days. I gather the timetable starts early next week, actually, with the parliamentary hustings, and then local parties can nominate thereafter. I actually think Shabana Mahmood would be a great candidate for deputy leader of the party. She is exactly the sort of Home Secretary I want to see, and I think having that tough stance on immigration that I think we will see coming from her over the next few weeks as she gets into the role would be perfect for the role of the deputy leader. The job of the deputy leader is to be a bridge between the party and the country and the leadership, and if she were to put her hat in the ring, I'd certainly vote for her.
Well, I think she has, unfortunately for you, Brendan, already ruled out in an interview that she's done today, yet to be broadcast, but has ruled out. But I like the fact that you're saying that about Shabana Mahmood. I've heard this...
I take all that back. I take it all back.
No, don't worry. I think it's good and it's useful to know, because look, I've heard about Shabana being part of what's called Blue Labour. Now, I must confess, I never heard of Blue Labour until after the last general election. I'd heard of New Labour and assumed that was the same thing, but it seems to be slightly different. Blue Labour being much more of the socially conservative-sided, what I would call old Labour, in fact. You look at places like Stoke-on-Trent, where Labour dominated for decades upon decades. It was being traditionally socially conservative, whilst also having a more interventionist economic model to generate growth and to stimulate local economies. I would actually say that this goes back to the Clement Attlee days, where he was all about building social housing, but at the same time, you had to maintain your gardens, look after your property, and if you didn't, out you were gone. I think that's what I would call common sense conservatism. I'd like to also see that too, where you can see that crossover. But indeed, I think it's an electoral winning strategy for certainly the Labour Party. Shabana obviously has come in now as Home Secretary. You say there that you've got much hope for her. I don't know much about her, but is there a fear that she's going to talk tough but under-deliver? Because people like me would say her problem is her boss, Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, certainly when she was Justice Secretary, you will recall there was the advice issued by, I think it was the court service or the legal service, that basically said sentences should be lighter for people from disadvantaged backgrounds, ethnic minority communities, and people that would be regarded as possibly having suffered oppression. Now, in her role as Justice Secretary, she said this was a load of nonsense and ordered a review to it, and that's now been, or is in the process of being, overturned. She's also said from day one, when she became Home Secretary just a few days ago, that her number one priority is stopping the boats. I gather she's already had bilateral discussions with a number of countries and is saying unless they accept return agreements, we will restrict visas for people coming from those countries. Obviously, you know, she's only been in the job a few days, but I've got great hope for her. She does come from that blue Labour tradition, which is a sort of no-nonsense, old-fashioned Labour. Of course, as part of the cabinet, there's collective responsibility and you've got to work as a team. But I think Keir Starmer has put Shabana in that position because he knows she's a tough cookie and will do what's necessary to stop the boats crossing the channel. And also underneath her, the appointment of Mike Tapp, who's the MP for Dover, literally on the front line of tackling the small boats crisis. He will make Nigel Farage look like a Zara Sultana when it comes to tackling the boats. He is extremely tough on this issue, and I think give him I know people want answers and solutions right now. Give him a few weeks and months, and I think we will see a dramatic turnaround in the approach to small boats under their leadership in the Home Office.
Obviously, there's a lot of people, and Sir Keir Starmer clearly has made it clear to Shabana Mahmood that she must succeed in order to tackling the boats, stopping the boats, so that she could take on, or Labour can take on, Nigel Farage. Do you accept that if Shabana Mahmood is unable to achieve that, that basically the door to 10 Downing Street is going to see Nigel Farage standing in front of it after the next general election?
Well, let's be straight up about this. You know, Labour in the last election, we didn't say, oh, we're going to try and stop the boats, but it might be difficult. The line in our manifesto, and by repeated spokespersons from the party, was that we're going to smash the gangs and stop the boats. And that is precisely what we're going to have to do. Now, of course, the small boats crossings have continued. Labour have implemented a number of measures that will try and get those numbers down. We have seen people returned. We have seen more people put into asylum claims and border force. But we're not at that stage yet where the gangs have been smashed and the boats have been stopped. And if we don't stop it, that is essentially giving Nigel Farage a huge pot of fuel to throw on the fire that will accelerate Reform's chances of winning the next general election. We can stop the boats. We've got the apparatus within the state to do it. We have the resources to do it. We just need to now get on and do it. And I'm very hopeful that that is what will happen under Shabana and Mike Tapp. We're never going to stop all crossings, but we need to get them down into the very, very low figures. You know, the English coastline's huge. I live down here on the south coast. It is impossible to monitor every little bay and cove, but we can monitor the majority of it and stop these boats crossing the channel.
And out of interest, obviously, again, you're saying that, you know, punchy stuff, and I like to see it, actually. It's nice to see a Labour person. You're almost too sound to be in Labour, in my opinion, Brendan. You know, you should come to the Conservative Party. You sound more right-wing than most of those colleagues I used to work with who sit on the Conservative backbenches.
Old Labour.
Old Labour. Well, I'll tell you what, I'd swap you for Simon Horn or Alicia Kearns any day of the week, personally. So, anyhow, you've obviously sounded, you're being very sound, as I say, on this issue. The fear, again, though, is, you know, ECHR, for example, where apparently it's being looked at, Article 8 in particular, which is used when it comes to stopping deportations of both foreign national offenders and illegal migrants, as well as allowing them the right to remain indefinitely. Isn't the truth, though, that Shabana's going to actually just need to, as people like me would say, leave the ECHR? And Sir Keir Starmer's already pulled the rug from under her feet by saying, under his watch, that will never happen, which is why I keep saying that Shabana may say all the right things. And look, I'm one of those, as I say, don't know her, so I'll wait to see if proof is in the pudding. But she is going to be hindered massively by a human rights lawyer loving boss who's never going to allow her to go as far as she needs to.
So on human rights, I think just the first thing to say is I like human rights. I like having rights that protect us and protect you. What I think needs to be done first is we need to talk to our colleagues in Europe about amending that particular section, because right now it's not just not working for Britain, it's not working for other signatories to the ECHR as well. And so if we can get a bilateral arrangement or a European-wide arrangement where we get this amended and changed, that is what I would do first. If that can't be achieved, I would leave it. And I think that's what would have to happen if we can't get that renegotiated. Now, Keir Starmer, whatever we think he's done here at home, abroad, I think it is fair to say the UK is more respected on the world stage, is more listened to. We've got those trade deals, etc. He should try and do that. And I think there have been some signals from the government, particularly in recent weeks and months, that that is something they will look at trying to do, to negotiate those arrangements in the ECHR. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how that can be done, but that should certainly be a priority.
And do you think if you take away immigration from reform, that's by meaning, as you say, you get those small boats crossings literally down to, the hundreds again, at most, as you say, it's impossible for any government to promise all boats being stopped indefinitely. Not even Nigel Farage would want to make that promise, I don't think. Do you believe that that will be the downfall of reform? Are they, in your opinion, a single-issue party, or do you think that reform pose danger as well on the economy, where Labour is facing potentially a up to £50 billion black hole if certain economic think tanks are to be believed, and obviously where we've seen things like the Workers' Rights Bill scare a lot of business, and of course that national insurance increase for employers, that £25 billion tax raid on employers that has meant that we've seen unemployment rise? Do you think that that's also an issue that Labour need to double down on as much as immigration?
Well, I am a Blairite, so I believe in a low-tax state but a progressive state. But if you look at reform's economic policies, and this is somewhere where both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, I think, have got an open goal, their numbers don't stack up. The sheer cost of their deportation plans, some people say it's 30 million, others say it's 10. They're announcing a huge amount of welfare cuts in the next few weeks. They're also promising tax cuts, but no other big public spending, so they're going to have to borrow more. They've made some small spending items in terms of interest payments on to private banks, but in local government they came in saying they were going to come in and sweep the board and make huge millions of pounds of savings. When they've got in there and looked at the books that were already in the public domain, there's not a lot of savings that they can make without cutting raw core services. I think actually on tax, they've said in many, not on tax, on public ownership, they've indicated in some areas that they would bring significant portions of industry into public ownership, up to 50% in some cases. I don't think a lot of those Tory voters that went over to reform went over for that sort of policy. So actually, if both the Labour Party and the Tory Party get their act together on the economy and start bringing growth to the economy by reducing taxation on business, by actually slimming down some areas of the NHS, all those backroom managers and things like this, also adopting investment zones, all manner of things we can go into to grow the economy. If they do that, I think Reform are on a bit of a sticky wicket because their own numbers do not add up, and a lot of commentators and a lot of independent analysis have shown that.
Brendan, just so you know, for anyone in Labour HQ who might be tuning in, if they want to be electable, if they want to win back trust in the British public, I hope to God they're sensible enough to put you out on the television more and broadcast round, because I think a lot of our listeners will agree with what you say. My problem for you, my friend, is that I think there's very few of you in the Labour Party, and I know that because there's very few in the Conservative Party who have the sound enough views like you on a broad range of things too. So I wish you all the very best. May I ask which part of the South Coast are you a councillor for, sorry?
I live in Ashford in Kent. We're about 20 minutes from the coast. So this small boats thing, we've known about it down here for years, long before Nigel Farage went out on his fishing boat and had a look. It's been going on for decades. Thank you very much for having me on your show today. It's been great fun.
No, it has been great fun. I would love listeners to text in. Would you vote for Brendan? Would Brendan give you hope in the Labour Party. That's Councillor Brenda Chilton, Labour councillor and former chair of Labour Leave. I think a lot of common sense has spoken there. My God, imagine if they had more of him in the Labour Party. They might actually be able to do the job of governing the country. Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000 is how you call us, WhatsApp us and voice note us. 87222 is how you can text us with the word talk at the start of your message, as well as message and follow us on X at talkTV. I'll see you after the break.
The understanding of quite how rotten the state has become, the sclerotic nature of our civil service, the legislation that has hamstrung us, the international treaties that prevent us being a democratic nation, that these things need to be undone, and the best people, the most committed people from all parties need to decide that. The two who are most on this side are the Conservatives and
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis here, in for Ian Collins on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk TV, and you've been texting and you have been calling. And one of our callers on the line next is Tarquin from London. Now, Tarquin, I must confess, I think I've used your name in a derogatory way when to describe people from the Labour left. Am I about to be proven wrong? Are there many sound Tarquins out there, and I need to apologise?
Jonathan, you can be forgiven, sir, so fear not. Historically, the T word was used by disparaging by virtue signaling pillocks. But before that, in the time when England was true, the T word from Tarquinius, a bit like you were saying about Fabius Maximus, the Fabian general who defeated Hannibal over the centuries, who's now making a comeback under the guise of Marxist socialism. But no, I fear not a problem at all with me, Jonathan. I think your show is going great. I love your reference to chai lattes. Chai lattes are in fact banned in Tarquin Towers, as you can imagine. It's only bacon, butter and Yorkshire tea here.
What a hero. What a bloody hero. I'm going to... Tarquin, we need to meet up one day and get a photo. I'm going to say there are sound Tarquins out there and no more discrimination from moany right-wingers like me.
Right, to the point. You asked earlier on, forgive me if I paraphrase it, will the change in ministers have any material effect on this invasion that we're experiencing on the South Coast? Now, the short answer is, please remember, it will have zero effect. And this is the rationale as to why, Jonathan. As Dominic Cummings himself said, he saw it firsthand when he was in government, in Boris's government. He said, I quote loosely, ministers have zero power. Yeah. All of the power is with the permanent secretaries. Whatever they decide goes. Now, of course, that is the answer to the question. Whatever, what's he called? Starmer does, such a non-entity. And he won't. He really is. He's just what did he get? A B and a C from Leeds. He was a complete cretin, this man. He's a moron. But of course, they're scraping the barrel now. The whole Blair project is scraping the barrel with buffoons like this. But so let me try and stay on the point if I can. It's difficult for me because, of course, I'm so emotional.
Don't you worry.
Yeah. Forgive me. There's nothing can materially changed in the favour of the English because the Doge is so wrapped up and sewn up by these Fabians, communist, Marxist lunatics with their common purpose to destroy internally surreptitiously since 1884 that we need to wheedle that lot out before any government's ministers can ever have any material change. Jonathan, it's not just the Labour lunatics. It's also if Reform were to get in or Advance UK, they're going to have to destroy so we're going to have to just basically sack all permanent secretaries immediately. Sack them all. Now, of course, he's not going to do it because they're all on his side. They're all Fabian lunatics, aren't they, with him? As well as if that judge bloke, that judiciary is infiltrated by Fabians as well. So we're all stuffed. We're all stuffed until we can get the Doge process going, which won't be for at least, 4 years, Jonathan, do you reckon?
I think 2028. I've said since the beginning, May 2028 is when I think we'll see a general election. But Labour might fool themselves into thinking, take it longer, the economy might turn a corner, we might start to get control of small boats. Well, I can tell you, as being part of the last Conservative government that pushed it as close to the end as it could, things don't ever get better. People are patient, they'll wait, and they'll sack you when they get the chance to.
What do you think of Dominic Cummings' comment about seeing firsthand of the fact that ministers got there? Did you see that at all?
Absolutely. I'll give you one example. So Kisgrove Sports Centre was a project I wanted to see us rebuild. I was told to contact Sport England because the Minister for Sport wasn't actually in charge of the money. I went to Sport England and they said they could give us £150,000 towards a scoping project for refurbishing the old sports centre, which would have cost around £7 million. But they said, if you want a new one, we'll give you £12 million worth of funding. I said, well, wouldn't it make more sense for you to save £5 million and refurbish an existing leisure centre, which was right next to, and I mean literally right next to, the only one of two state secondary schools in that community, a town of 25,000 people? No. The answer was no. And when I went to the minister saying, but I'm trying to save taxpayer money, he went, well, I'm meeting the chief executive, so I can have a word with him, but I can't tell him what to do. And I was like, well, that's my money, your money, taxpayers' money, funding this guy. Why is it that you have no control over how to do it? And every time there was an issue with the environment, a nasty-smelling waste site in Newcastle Lyme, it was the Environment Agency had to deal with. These quangos, this quangocracy that we're stuck in is a disgrace.
Do you remember when Cameron said, bonfire of the quangos, are you old enough to? Of course you.
And we made more. We designed more.
Yes. What happened to that?
I know, honestly. The Conservatives have got so much to say sorry for with this. Because whilst I'll swing at Labour all day long, I'm more angry at the Conservatives because they had so many chances to deal with this stuff, and all they did was continue the Blair project.
Yes, indeed. Well, we've got such a quangocracy now, Jonathan, and with Labour, of course, they're on steroids because they pump all this money into the public sector, completely unproductive, and now they're clobbering small businesses with more VAT stuff. I mean, I was watching a documentary about the way that the HMRC is now turning poor small businesses with any turnover over 90,000 for VAT into tax collection agencies for them because they're so desperate to pay off their clientele, their clients, you know what I mean? It's nauseating.
No, it is indeed. It is indeed. Tarquin, thank you so much for calling in. It's good to know there are sound Tarquins out there. He's called us here on the Home of Common Sense. That is talk, and we've got some more texts coming in as well for you. We've got this. All this talk from your Labour guest is too little, too late. That was that's current current Labour councillor who was making some very sound comments earlier on. Over a year of not listening from Labour, you are asking your guests today when they will start reducing migration. What about the tens of thousands that have arrived under Labour in the past year? We're done with the old parties. Too many promises, too many lies. Time to switch, Jonathan. That was from Anne. And guess what? We've got a voice note from Nikki, who's in Kent.
Hello, Jonathan. You say that you like to get a wide range of opinions from your guests, but you certainly don't want any dissenting opinions from your listeners. I've sent in numerous voicemails and messages, but because I kind of don't agree with what nearly 100% of everybody else does who phones in or contacts you, you don't put me on the airwaves. Yeah, it gets a bit tedious if everybody says exactly the same things. And also, I'd like to say, when your callers say Reform and Farage speak for the whole country, they don't. They speak for part of the country.
Well, Nikki, all I'll say is, first of all, we've played it live on air. Number two, believe me, I only can see a portion of the texts and the WhatsApps that come in, because obviously I'm looking down this camera lens here. I've got multiple screens and multiple information, got a newsreel to make sure I get through to, and my amazing team behind the glass who have to babysit me also have to monitor all that, make sure the camera's in the right place, while I keep swerving from side to side, driving the camera woman absolutely crazy today. The sound person trying to make sure I don't bang my tie where my microphone is or pull my earpiece out, which I keep fiddling with today. And then my amazing producer, who is Adam, who's got the patience of a saint when it comes to trying to tell me, just stick to this, Jonathan, or can you not rant on for too long for that, or we need to hit the break at this point. And they do all that whilst reading all the texts, all the WhatsApps, and trying to listen to all the voice notes too. So believe me, we are welcome to a wide range of views and opinions. If you call in, I will do all my utmost to make sure you get on air. I'm not looking for everyone to agree with me. I actually love it to have a good old Barney, and if you don't believe me, you can ask my wife. And we'll go to one more before we go to the break, who's from Nick in London, who's calling in about the illegal migration crisis. Hello, Nick.
Yes, hello there. I hope you're well. You're a Labour guy who generally was very good. It's quite wrong, though, in saying you have to look after the entire southern coast of England for the migrants coming over. Yes, the entire southern coast is a long way, but the migrants are only coming over generally from the shortest route, Calais-Dover. They're not coming over St Malo to Portsmouth or Cherbourg to New Haven or something. They're coming across Calais-Dover. So there's a relatively short stretch of coast you need to look out for. Yeah. The boats coming over are hardly speed boats. They're the equivalent of snails, nautical snails coming over. And I don't believe for an instant that our security services and Navy can't track these things coming over. It must take, 3-4 hours for them coming over the 22 odd miles between Calais and Dover. Are we seriously saying that our Navy can't track them, can't intercept them? I mean, if nothing else, there's a ferry going over from Dover to Calais more or less every half hour. They could radio in. We've seen one. And so I don't believe for an instant that the Navy should they were so minded, send out a patrol, intercept them, arrest them, put them in a detention camp, and pretty pronto ship them out elsewhere. And I have a plan for that as well, because I reckon it should be conditional upon the foreign aid from this country, that you, the third country, the second country, accept migrants who have come over illegally. Conditional upon any money going out. It wouldn't last long, I wouldn't have thought, because the word would soon get around on the northern French coast that coming over in these small boats doesn't work. You'll be shipped off to goodness knows where, and we would solve it. The Australians did this on their northern Australian coast about 10 years back. They had a very similar thing with people coming across, and they did this, and it stopped it stone dead. It's not about we can't do it. It's about the will to do it. And sorry, I'm going on.
No, well, look, Nick, thank you so much for that impassioned call there. And rightly, you point out a lot of things that you're deeply frustrated by. And we really appreciate you taking that time to share those views with us. Well, if you want to be like Nick and calling in, 0344 499 1000 is how you can WhatsApp, voice note, as you heard Nikki from Kent do, or indeed call us. You can text the word talk at the start of your message to 87222. And you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. We'll see you after the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis taking you through the final half hour of our show today here on the home of common sense. That is Talk. Before I hand over to the amazing Petri to take you through drive time later on between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Make sure you stay tuned in. There'll be lots going on this evening for you to discuss with her, and we'll be going through more of the stories that we have so far today. My next guest, his name is Dr. Steve Taylor, GP and spokesperson for Doctors Association UK. He's also joining me down the line today. Hello, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, good to speak to you, Jonathan.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, I found this quite a remarkable story. Number one, we've got a situation where 2 GP surgeries are shutting down every week, forcing family doctors to care for hundreds more patients. Patients face travelling further to see a doctor as more than 1,000 GP practices have shut since 2018, intensifying a crisis at the NHS front door. I mean, out of interest, Steve, first of all, can I ask, what's fueling this? What's going on? Why is the situation as bad as it is?
Well, quite simply, it's money. I mean, the reality is that I've been a GP 30 years, so quite a long time. I've been involved in running a small practice most of that time. And the amount of money that GP practices get per head of patient basically hasn't risen with inflation. It hasn't gone up. So practices are basically trying to cut their costs all over the place, and eventually that means there isn't enough money to employ GPs.
It seems quite at odds with the idea that Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to return care into the community. Obviously, we've heard a lot about having, I think, 4 million now additional GP appointments from this Labour government. They would argue that £25 billion that they raised through the jobs tax, increasing national insurance on employers, has gone into the NHS. Has that not yet trickled down to GPs?
Not really, no. And there are a number of factors involved in that. So over the last 10 years, we've lost about 20% of our income. This is income to run practices. I'm not talking about GPs' income, although that's gone down as well. So there isn't as much money there. So I mean, I bought a ticket this morning for a train ticket to London. I paid £186 return, which seems far too much money, doesn't it? But that's £17 more than a GP practice will get for the entire year of looking after me as a patient. £168 a year is all you get. That's on average 7 appointments, all the referrals, all the admin, all the prescriptions. I must admit, I've been into my GP practice myself as a GP. I'm a patient as well, and I've had to queue up and be the person that's number 35 on the phone lines and all the rest of it. And actually, I've used the practice this year 5 times myself because I've needed to. My health isn't always perfect. I don't know about yours, but mine isn't always perfect, and I still need to go in. I've got a blood pressure. I've got other issues. I still need to go in. So it's not enough money. If that had kept up with inflation over the last 10 years, that would be, rather than £168, it would be 204, I think, something like that. So £35 less.
Well, I mean, that's quite a remarkable statistic that you've shared with us, and that's for £168 for an entire year for a single patient. So the problem now is that obviously many GP surgeries will be trying to hoover up as many more names onto their books as possible. But as you say, if you've got people using the service multiple times throughout the course of the year, then simply you're having to find sort of savings anywhere you can, which will mean, I suppose, less nurses, maybe less GPs even, or less administrative staff, which then adds more burdensome ideas to you yourselves as those who run the practice.
Indeed, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, the average GP now has got 2,300 patients. When I started, it was 1,800. So there's an extra 500 patients that I now need to look after compared with what I used to do before. It's unsustainable. We do need more money. I mean, I'll give some credit to the Labour government a little bit. They have said that they want to bring back the family doctor. They have said they'll put money in. But they've given with one hand and taken away with another.
Well, coming to that, I mean, this might be kite flying. Rachel Reeves will probably say it is, although my frustration is, well, if it is kite flying, why on earth have you allowed the kite to even fly? You should be slamming this entirely straight away. Rachel Reeves apparently is considering proposals for a tax rate on GPs and other professionals that would raise almost £2 billion a year. The Treasury has been presented with plans to levy national insurance on partnerships as she scrambles for ways to fill a £50 billion black hole in the public purse. Such a move would impact 190,000 workers, with family doctors, lawyers and solicitors, accountants and financial advisors hit the hardest. The blueprint has been put forward by the Centre for the Analysis of Taxation, a think tank with ideas Angela Rayner has adopted in the past. In a report, it said the current exemption for employer national insurance contributions enjoyed by partnerships was an accident of history. It advocates the introduction of partnerships national insurance contributions as a step forward, a step towards equalising the tax treatment across different forms of income from work. Would you be advising Rachel Reeves to slam this idea now, because this will also have a detrimental impact on many other GP practices?
100%. I mean, the NI contributions are already costing GP practices a lot of money. It is part of the problem. They've given some money into general practice, but they've taken it away with NI contributions, and this seems like an extra nail in the coffin of some practices. I mean, I think particularly smaller practices, this is a difficult scenario. A number of my friends have seen practices even in the middle of the Lake District, which you'd imagine being one of the easiest and loveliest places to work. They've ended up having to hand back their contracts, which is crazy, isn't it?
It's very depressing indeed. I mean, what would be, for you, the main message that listeners here should take away in terms of GP services? Some will obviously say, well, I have to call at 8 a.m. every day to try and get an appointment, and GPs are well paid. You know, they'll try and claim that many of you are earning over £100,000 a year, so it's you're very well looked after. And some even will go as far as say GPs shouldn't be private partnerships or private practices. They should be under the guise of the NHS. What would be your message back to the charge that maybe some people may not be as empathetic as others would be when it comes to our GPs?
I mean, the honest truth is most GPs, if not all GPs, are there for patients. They generally want to provide a good care and good service. They aren't in it for the money. If they were, they'd be in another job. So generally speaking, this is I mean, we do pay GPs reasonably well, but it's 20% less than it used to be. And I would say that we generally want to provide good care for patients. That's what we're here to do. That's what I've done for 30 years. Hopefully, if you speak to most of my patients, they'd agree.
Well, look, that's Dr. Steve Taylor, GP, spokesperson for the Doctors Association UK. Thank you so much for joining us down the line today. Really, really helpful indeed. Now, we've got some more texts coming in again from all of you. I'm loving the fact that we're getting a conversation going. We've got here, Mark Rowley's statement is proof how politicised the police are nowadays. I have no doubt he should have the power to enforce policing as he chooses, but his words indicate his hands are tied by Labour. After all, it's completely unlikely Starmer would allow any police commissioner to take decisions which are at odds with his agenda. I've long thought the police are now the long arm of government. Rowley is just another Labour useful idiot. That's in relation to Sir Mark Rowley saying that he needs the government to change the law in order to enable him to police the streets and not the tweets. Some of you, I'm flabbergasted that we need yet another law. Please, on Lord Almighty, not another law. Just enforce the ones we already have and actually do the job. Hello, Jonathan. How lovely to see your lovely smile to cheer us up in these dark days. I should really wish my wife would text me like this sometimes. Lovely to have had Mark on before. You also, how lucky you are to have Talk. What would be without you all? Catherine from the Isle of Lewis. Well, I am very blessed to be here on the Home of Common Sense. Talk is a great station indeed, to get very sound views and to make sure we stir the national debate and conversation. Never, ever miss an opportunity. Sorry, your last guest, Brendan, was delusional. By the time we get agreement from other countries to make changes to the ECHR, the country would be on its knees. We cannot afford this and we cannot support it any longer. We are bordering on bankruptcy. Is Brendan another human rights lawyer by any chance? Sounds like it. Delays, delays, delays. No, he would not get my vote. That's in relation to Councillor Brendan, who was a Labour councillor on the South Coast, who I thought sounded very much like the type of Labour person that would win people back over. Another one here coming in from Brad in Hillingdon. Jonathan, regarding boats, I would like to see the things they used to contain. Oil spills stretched across the English Channel. A physical barrier with gate stations every so often. That will stop them. So an interesting, a border down the English Channel. Remember, the busiest piece of water going. Would that really be feasible? And then Ray from Newcastle, interesting. This is regarding the Labour deputy leadership. Please let it be Thornbury with her known views of flying the St George's flag. Let her and Starmer plod on ripping the Labour Party apart until the next election. As long as they don't do damage to the country any further, it would be the final nail in the Labour's coffin and guarantee a landslide victory. Well, this comes off the back that we have, by the way, a scoop here from Kevin Schofield, political editor, of Huffington Post UK, who says that Huffington Post has seen a message from Emily Thornbury asking for Labour MPs to back her for deputy leader. The message says, welfare, Gaza, employment rights, wealth inequality, too many mistakes. We've been telling them and they aren't listening. Emily Thornbury looking like she's pitching for herself to be deputy leader of the Labour Party. What do you think? Well, tell me after the break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Jonathan Gullis sitting in for Ian Collins in the final segment before handing over to Petri, who will take you through the drive time, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. She'll do a fantastic job, as she always does, so stay tuned. We go to my next guest because I want to make sure I get as much as I can squeezed in. His name is Dan Barker. He is now the elected Reform UK Party board member. Many congratulations, Dan, on your election. What was the feeling like to be on stage there at a conference on Friday? I think Saturday you were up on stage, weren't you? And indeed Friday as well, as a party board member.
Well, thank you for having me on, Jonathan. And yes, it was my first time on stage, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought I got quite a good response, as we all did, from the audience.
Well, indeed, look, I was there on Friday on a commercial basis, and I must say that I thought the Friday was very well run. Obviously, look, there's still always little bits and pieces you can tweak, but for a party that is still very young and new, it was quite, what I think, a remarkable transformation from what would have been in there only just a couple of years ago. Certainly everyone I spoke to who's been to numerous conferences said this was the biggest and the best they'd witnessed to date. There are some, obviously, attacks coming regarding this Saturday. Some people saying Lucy Connolly shouldn't have been platformed. She is, at the end of the day, was convicted for inciting racial hatred, albeit I'm sure you and I, Dan, will accept the fact that she was given, I think, very poor legal advice. And even though that tweet of hers was disgusting and deplorable, she herself acknowledges that the sentence she received was totally and unreservedly ridiculous when it comes to people like Hugh Edwards at the same time, who is literally now a convicted paedophile, never was held on remand and never even saw a day behind bars. But this doctor, I've obviously stirred some people on on our text today who did say, I think, some unpleasant things about King Charles. Do you think that was a mistake to platform such an individual?
Well, I didn't watch his speech. I mean, I spent most of my time. I missed a lot of things I wanted to watch. I was talking to members and people, who'd voted for me and was saying hello, and I was saying thank you. But I mean, I would, the party's response, I think, is appropriate. Is whilst we don't endorse that, everything he said, we are the party of free speech, and he made some valid points in other areas, I understand. And I think that our opposition have jumped on some of his more controversial statements and said that that's all on reform, etc., etc. And I think it shows that for a very successful conference, where even with the Angela Rayner resignation, we still managed to keep the headlines on people who were interested in what we were saying, what we were doing, what Nigel was saying. That it's just pettiness, splitting hairs about what one speaker says, who isn't a leader, he's not an elected member of the party. He's just someone who came along to give a talk on a topic of interest. So I think it's a bit unfair, a bit rich coming from the Labour Party, really.
Well, indeed. I mean, what's quite interesting, Dan, is obviously Nadine Dorries, I think, really did obviously cause a lot of people to raise an eyebrow. No one, I think, saw that defection coming. Are you happy to see Nadine Dorries cross the floor and join Reform UK?
Well, the response I've heard to her coming over, and I was surprised at her, actually. I wasn't expecting her. I was expecting others possibly, but I heard she was quite well received, particularly by women, and I thought that the speech that she gave on the Friday, which was brought forward because of the Rayner announcement, so she was kind of rushed on stage. I thought it was a very good speech, and it came across very well. It landed very well with the membership, I think.
Look, Dan, you'd have had the same conversations as I had with some people, which is obviously there is a feeling, I think, that the fear is Reform starts to look like Tory Party 2.0. And I think that particularly with ex-Conservative MPs, there's becoming a position of how many more are we simply going to allow to jump ship. And as some people would say, jump on the life raft. Sophie Preston Hall, a great member that I spoke to at Reform Conference, was saying very clearly what I think a lot of members were saying is there should now really be a list of people that you're willing to allow to come across because they share the values consistently with Reform UK in terms of long-term vision on policy, but also kind of the people that will make the reform argument out there on the media, as well as obviously even a deadline to say, look, the life raft won't be floating there forever. Now's your time to come aboard. Do you think that's right? Do you think you as the party board member and other board members need to consider how long it is you're willing to allow these defections to take place in order to avoid the attack of opponents, that you're simply becoming a cast-off for Tory rejects, some people might say, or even the Conservatives saying maybe getting rid of, you're taking some of the worst elements of the Conservative Party into your own ranks?
Well, I mean, that will always be levelled at us, whatever happens, every time someone comes over. I mean, I started out life in the Conservatives and I defected, albeit when I did it 18 months ago, there was no Nigel, and Reform were polling at less than 10%. So, everyone thought I was crazy, quite frankly, to go then. But I've been proven wrong on that point. So, but I don't know. I think you've got to look on a case-by-case basis. There are some genuine right-wing Tories who are, sort of in a party where I think they're outnumbered by what I would call Liberal Democrats, One Nation Tories, who dominate the group and dominate the way the party's run. So I think there are some people who would add value. And I think, when Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example, was there on Saturday, people were very hopeful that he would say, I'm joining. And he made it very clear he wasn't joining. He was talked about uniting. But, some people like him are universally well respected and well liked. So I think, and then there's everything in between. But I think ultimately it's up to Nigel who will come and who won't come, and when and when not. So I think we'll have to just wait and see.
And when it comes to obviously uniting, Nadine Dorries did put out there, and it certainly ruffled feathers I saw online with certain members of Reform UK, that she would like to see Nigel and Boris park their egos to one side, unite in common cause, build an alliance between the Conservatives and Reform UK in order to take the fight to this Labour government. Would you welcome some sort of deal, some sort of alliance between Reform and the Conservatives, or do you think there's simply no need for such a deal?
Well, personally, I can't see there being any sort of deal this side of an election. I mean, after an election, depending on how that falls, we'd have to see what the landscape looked like. But I think in terms of Boris, I don't know, he's a very Marmite character, always has been, and even more so since his performance in office. There's some big question marks over his competence, I think, after all the scandals. But I don't think fundamentally Reform don't really need to the Tories for an alliance. And also, you look at the Tories, have they really got to grips with the reasons why they were thrown out of office so abruptly, so brutally by the electorate? I'm not sure they've learnt the lesson yet, or if they have, they certainly haven't demonstrated it publicly enough. With some of the things that come out with and the way that they're attacking Labour as well, I don't think it really shows they've turned a page yet.
Very interesting indeed. Now, obviously, Sir Keir Starmer had his reshuffle. Shabana Mahmood is being talked up in the media as being this very tough Blue Labour, as they call it, socially conservative Home Secretary who's going to come in. She's going to take Nigel's thunder and Reform UK's thunder away from them and stop these boats. She's going to be willing to do whatever it takes. She's going to be willing to withdraw visas from countries that don't cooperate to take back illegal migrants and foreign national offenders. She's going to delve into looking at the ECHR, particularly around Article 8. She's going to be tough. Dan, do you worry about Shabana Mahmood? Is she someone you fear? Do you think she's going to steal your thunder in Reform UK? And once she takes immigration off the table, there'll be nothing for Reform UK to take after?
No, not at all. And I actually hope that she does it. She follows through. She does all those things, because I think whilst it's, when Reform out here just to make fiscal capital out of immigration, we want to see this stopped, tomorrow. And it could be stopped tomorrow if they declared a national emergency and took the action required. 1,000 crossings, 1,000 people crossed over on the day of the reshuffle. I mean, this is not a joke. This is a crisis. And the sooner it's sorted out, the better. Even if Labour sorted out the immigration problem by the end of next week, I think we would still be polling at this level, because everything needs so much work. The country's broken. We've had 30 years of a Blairite socialist agenda, and the wheels are coming off now, and we've got to stop it before it's too late.
Dan Barker, Reform UK Party board member, thank you so much for joining us on the studio today and giving us your side of things. Well, it's not long. It's actually minutes away before Petri comes in and takes over and takes us through the drive time hour. Hello, my love. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. We've not met. It's nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Lovely to meet you too. Now, what is it you're going to be looking at drive time today?
Well, we're going to be doing the politics, looking at the politics of the situation at the moment, like you've been doing as well. But one of the questions I want to ask actually is, should Angela Rayner turn down her severance pay? That's £17,000. Now, didn't she campaign for anybody who broke the ministerial rules to not get the severance pay? We've not